Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Housing and Community Select Committee. I'm Councillor Claire Simmons, Chair of the committee, and I am chairing tonight's meeting. The event is being recorded and will be available for members of the public and media to watch following the meeting. I now would like to welcome all those in Committee Room 1 at Kensington Town Hall. Before we proceed with the meeting, I would ask members of the committee to please make sure your mobiles are on silent or switched off. And we will start with 72 seconds of silence to remember those who lost their lives in the Grenfell tragedy.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we move to the agenda. Apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor De Harbo Iseg. Have there been any other further apologies? Declarations of interest. Does any member have a declaration or an interest to declare?
We have to declare if we're chairs of residents' associations.
I don't know, you can if you wish. We move to the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of July 2024. The minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. I would like, before we discuss agreeing them, I would like to mention one point on the minutes, which I guess is a matter arising concerning the repairs. And it notes in the minutes the discrepancy between the response to the recommendations and the residents' evidence. And I don't know whether we as a committee feel that this still needs to be addressed and whether we would wish to see a fuller response from the lead member.
It should be.
Do you think there should be?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. So that being the case, can we see, that's that. Are we agreeing that the minutes are agreed? Agreeing? So we also, I would like to draw attention to the second action on the action tracker, 19th of September 2023. The members to visit private sector accommodation with environmental health concerns as part of the visit programme. Due to scheduling conflicts, it was not possible to organise visits during the last municipal year, and enforcement powers and improving the quality of registered provider homes is not on the work programme for 24 to 25. With the committee's agreement, can we remove that action from the tracker?
I think I did want to know why visits couldn't go ahead anyway. I mean, if they were either on offer, I appreciate it's not part of the work program, but I did look at it and go, sometimes there are offers by environmental team, and I wondered if
we would take it up anyway.
it was just
What do we think as a committee?
Did you say you want to drop it?
Yeah.
The registered providers not being checked by environmental health.
no, it's
Private sector accommodation with environmental health concerns.
I don't think it should be dropped. I think
We think we want to keep it on.
well, if the borough uses 70 70% of its housing in housing association. I think we should retain it.
Yeah.
Because that's where we have a gap.
Yeah, do we all agree that then? So we don't want to remove that action from the draft, and we want to make sure that it happens. Thank you. So before we move on to the next paper, I will just say a few words about meeting procedure. First of all, I would like to welcome the members of the public attending the meeting. And on behalf of the committee members, say that we're very pleased to see you here. There are leaflets on the chairs which explain what scrutiny meetings are and what we will be doing at today's meeting. As we go through the agenda, I will invite members of the public to comment on the reports if they wish, and members of the committee will take the evidence heard into account when scrutinising the reports. I'm going to ask members of the public to indicate which report they are attending for, as this will assist with balancing the meeting by enabling me to apportion indicative times for each report. Could you please raise your hand and indicate if you have come for a particular item? A4, Grenfell Tower Inquiry. A5, Hazelwood and Adair Towers. A6, the Housing Revenue Account. A7, Council Support to Resident Associations. Thank you. For each item, I will ask residents to raise their hand if they wish to speak and speak through me as chair of the meeting. Each speaker will have approximately 2 minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Please note that contributions must be directly relevant to the topic under scrutiny. Personal issues and complaints should not be raised at the meeting. They can be raised afterwards with officers. And so saying, we will move to item A4 on the agenda, which is the Grenfell Tower Inquiry Phase 2 report update on the Council's response. This report provides details of the process of how the Council intends to respond to the findings and recommendations of the Grenfell Tower Inquiry's final Phase 2 report. The report is not intended to be about the implications for the public inquiry report for the Council. This will be discussed at other meetings, starting with overview and scrutiny committee meeting next week on the 18th of September, and the following week at leadership team on the 25th. Additionally, the public speaking session at the 9th of October full council meeting has been set aside, comments on the Grenfell Tower inquiry report. The public speaking session at the following 27th of November meeting of full council will welcome residents to comment on the council's proposed response to the public inquiry report. At this meeting, the committee will be focusing on the recommendation in paragraph 2.2 of the report to consider if there are any further steps that could be taken to ensure that elected members and residents are effectively engaged and involved in the response. To that end, I would now like to invite those residents present to share their experiences or concerns with the committee before the committee discusses the report. In particular, your views on the plans for community engagement and consultation in developing the council's response. Time will be limited for 2 minutes for each speaker to allow as many people as possible the opportunity to speak. Would anybody like to speak? Samia, would you like to?
I'm afraid it might take 3 minutes and 30 seconds. If there's no objection in public. I've got a question specific to this paper, but I feel it's important that I give you a bit of context so you could answer the question. Dear members of the committee, for years we have campaigned tirelessly for changes in a remarkably ineffective local government arrangement, for the creation of effective mechanisms for local accountability, and for the empowerment of residents to make decisions that directly affect their lives. The inquiry's findings have confirmed what we have long known, that the deaths of 72 people were avoidable and resulted from a catastrophic failure of duty by those entrusted with our safety and for our health. The lack of marked respect for human decency goes beyond the periods within the scope of the public inquiry. To this very day, we are still experiencing institutional indifferences, a culture of local government making decisions about basics for residents and without them, a culture that puts us in a category, at best referring to us as working class rather than poor people, a culture where we who live in social housing, who grew up in social housing, or who are associated with social housing are considered as not worthy of having an opinion, let alone having the ability and or to be trusted to make decisions that affect us. A category of people considered not capable of creating wealth, creating growth, creating change. This could not be farther from the truth. I often wondered, as a professional with extensive experience in public policy making, what the parameters that are still hindering change within Kensington Justice continue to be. In my professional career, I successfully created change at local, national, and international level. I never ever encountered any difficulties in negotiating either nationally or transnationally, and at times within quite complex political landscape. I have concluded that the difference lies in the way this authority view me and my community. It is that very unchallenged contempt within the local authority that obstructs the successful implementation of laws, guidance, and initiatives that are meant to keep us safe, that are meant to give us a say. I have said it before, the fundamental issue is the way you, as a local authority, look at us. You look at us for who you think we are, rather than for who we are. Now the inquiry made a damning finding of facts that you, after the fire, discriminated against people like me from the North African community, including anyone believed to be Moroccan or associated with the Moroccan culture and the Muslim community. This changes everything. It is no longer for us as a community from a BME background to prove our point. It is now on you to disprove it. Yet, we continue to engage with you. We continue to attend your drop-ins. We continue to fill in your surveys. For years, we were told that there were too many groups, that there were too many voices creating a toxic environment where we residents and elected representatives of the state were a mere afterthought, were excluded, and environment where service providers and increased rental preferred partners started advocating for us, further diluted the voices of residents. The narrative of a dysfunctional and divided community could not be farther from the truth. In March 2018, I did what had never been done in the history of Kensington and Chelsea by bringing together key voices from the voluntary sector, the community sector, and other groups, calling for change and making a specific number of recommendations. This was the largest post-fire coalition of voices from all parts of this borough. You did not listen. We were ignored. Worse, some of your officers worked and continue to work against us in the community. So my question to you is, why should we attend your drop-ins? Why should we trust you when your leader, within 24 hours of the publication of the report, went on TV and said you have changed, breaking a promise that your response would be community-led? In other words, telling us that there's nothing to learn, nothing to assess with honesty, as you have already changed. What is the point of the proposed engagement? Thank you so much.
Sarah, before you leave the table, I wonder if any of you would like to ask you any questions about what you've just said.
I think it's quite self-explanatory.
Yes, thank you, Sonia. And we have all seen, I think, the additional papers that you have.
Which would be referred to in the section about residents' association.
Thank you very much. Would any other member of the public like to speak on this item?
Yeah, I'd like to speak about Bramford Walk.
Thank you, Caesar. Please have a seat.
Hi, my name is Aziza. I'm the chair of Bramford Walk. Got a vice chair over there, Hanan. So we opened up Bramford Walk Resident Association because at the beginning of the fire, you know, there was so much going on, and we were told at the very beginning that everywhere we went for help and support, we were told, "Oh, are you from the tower?" No, we're not. So there's no help from you. So everywhere we went for support and help, we obviously were told straight away, we can't go back to our homes. We lost everything. We ran out in our pajamas, only to be told we can't go back home. Everywhere we went for support, we were told if you're not from the tower, then there's not much support for you. So myself and Hanan, mother of 5, mother of 4, opened up Grenfell Walk Resident Association because we had quite a few elderly and people that had English as a second language. We felt we weren't getting no support. So with that, we took that under our wings and we managed to just really 70 families just to try and get them as much help and support through the situation. My recommendation to the council is as Grenfell Walk it's only ever been myself and Hanan for 7 years running with the association. We feel that the council doesn't support us. We've asked on many occasions for some space, office space, spaces to have our meetings, always being rejected by the council. We don't seem to be getting as much support as other associations. Sorry, I've just written some notes here. So for my recommendations for the council is for Grenfell Walk Resident Association just to be able to have to be kept in the loop. And the reason why I want to talk is because at the moment, the community, from what we're hearing, seem to be saying that Lancaster West seem to be having involvement in the decision of what's happening in Grenfell Walk. As of yet, there's probably about 5 of us, including myself, that still have our possessions and our property in Grenfell Walk. So what Grenfell Walk wants is we want to ask, why is all communications why are communication being held about Grenfell Walk that we are not aware of? We would like to know what's happening with Grenfell Walk.
Can I just respond to that particular point? We'll be discussing later in the meeting about support for resident associations.
Right.
And it seems like the issues that you are raising are specific current issues around your resident association. So I think we will take them at the end.
So what is it about
That's
now?
all right. So we are talking about the council's response,
Right.
council's planned response and engagement around the Grenfell Tower inquiry report phase 2.
Oh, right.
We're part of the council's response. The council, it's you guys' fault that we haven't got our houses anymore. Yeah. You guys put us in this position. We didn't choose to leave our house alone that night. So it's you guys' responsibility to put us in that inquiry as well. No one has spoken to us about what's happening with our flats. Nobody's even told us why we're not allowed back into our flats. There's no transparency between us. So I think what Aziza said
Yes.
right now is very linked to the Grenfell inquiry.
Yeah.
And it's a lack of Grenfell Walk being included in this as well. So I think it's very, very
It absolutely is, and it's really important what is being talked about here tonight. I think as a committee, it's not entirely on the item on the agenda that we have to deal with tonight. However, having been raised, I think it's important that we as committee take it on board
Right.
and look at where this can be raised
Right.
in order to be able to get some
So that's
change.
That's the only reason why I came, and why we came is really just to say what is happening with Grenfell Walk.
Yeah.
Why are we not being kept in the loop? We were told in so many meetings, even with the what's it called, the memorial, that Grenfell Walk gets kept in the loop. We get to first choice is if they're going to refurbish them, and we get first choice to go back. And anything done with Grenfell Walk, as Grenfell chair and vice chair, we should be the first one to be consulted as to what is going to happen. But at the moment, what is going around is people seem to be knowing more about what's happening to Grenfell Walk than ourselves.
Sure.
And also, like I said, I would like to put some recommendation about the council working with Grenfell Walk and keeping us in the loop and keeping us, informed in what's going on. And like you said, given the chance for the association to be getting support, in getting spaces, getting office spaces, getting meeting spaces, what funding is there for us, what support is there for us, and that. Tell you the truth, as of yet, we're not getting nothing. So like you sort of said, yes, we would like to know what's going on with Grenfell Walk.
Understood.
May I say that actually the statement from the chair of Grenfell Walk Residents Association is very relevant to this to this agenda item because you have an engagement plan for the response. You've not put the bereaved and the survivors. So what about Brentford Walk in that engagement plan? So I think that's also, that warrants a response as to in your proposed documents in that agenda item. There's no mention of Brentford Walk. So what's the council position vis-a-vis that consultation and engagement?
Well,
with Brentford
this
Walk?
is it, Samia. This has always been it. We have always been, from pillar to post. You know, we get people saying, "Are you survivors?" We get the council saying you're survivors, but when they're ready, you're not survivors. Then you've got the community calling us survivors. Then some are not calling us survivors. What are we? Who are we? All we done was on that night ran for our lives, only to be told never to go back. So, like Samia said, yes, we would like to finally be addressed as Brentford Walk and be mentioned as Brentford Walk instead of survivors when you guys feel like calling us survivors, and when you don't feel like calling us survivors, you just put us as residents. So, like Samia said, it would be really important that in future we are addressed as Brentford Walk.
So I think, as Samia said, it is relevant to the agenda item in that regard. So I think there is some really useful learning there for the council in its planning of this engagement. So we have noted that, and I think we are all in agreement 100%.
So are you saying that?
On top of that, I would also say, I think the fact that you have had to come here to raise this, and we are 7 years down the line, I think that highlights quite strongly the fact that something has been.
Well, you're very
wrong.
much aware, Claire, because we've spoken on so many occasions, and I have told you.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen me for 7 years like a headless chicken running around for Brentford Walk non-stop. It's still up to date without a penny being charged. I don't charge nothing. It's the love of, our hearts. We're a family, we lost everything, and I've been, myself and Hannah have been doing so much. So I honestly thought today was about talking about association. So that's why I sat here and wasn't sure that this.
It is in the paper. You can come back and talk as well if you want.
Right, okay.
Councillor McVeigh, you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is the right time, but Aziz, thank you very much for coming. We met in the very early days.
We
when I
did,
was a
yes.
volunteer at Rugby
Yes.
before I was a councillor.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for raising this. I am a new lead member for housing, and what you're saying is absolutely relevant to me. And I haven't yet met with you in my official capacity, so what you say is correct. Is completely correct that we need to meet with you. So, Anand and Aziz, please, I'd really like to meet with you very soon.
Well, that'd be
discuss
very
how we
nice.
can
And like I said, as a chair
do
of
the
Brentford
correct
Walk,
support.
as a chair of Brentford Walk, myself and Hannah, we have continuously for 7 years been running to every single meeting and voicing our concerns and our output, and still till date, 7 years on, we are still just being brushed, and we do try to attend as much, just to put our voice out there.
Committee and all that.
So, yeah.
We arranged them, so I'm done.
So it's housing management, so we'll arrange something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Great. No, thank you, Claire.
And sorry,
And
the
thank you.
point about the future of the properties within Brentford Walk, is there a commitment that will be made before
Yeah.
that engagement directly with Brentford Walk? Because it's still the properties.
See, the problem is, we've been told by the council, we went on numerous meetings, also with, what is it called? What?
James Castell.
Yeah. So we've always been told that we will be kept in the loop. We will get first choice should they choose to refurbish them. We should get, the residents should get first choice to be able to go back. And we should be kept in the loop as to exactly what's happening. Because as of yet, people still don't understand, including my place, which was a 5-bedroom. I still have everything. We ran out on our night. So I've even got my cup that was there when I had, in the evening. So there's our stuff there where nobody is telling us nothing. But yet we're hearing the community, we're hearing James at Lancaster West making decision with Lancaster West about our property, but yet we're the chairs and we're not being kept on the loop. So all we're asking for, again, please, is somebody can just keep us in a loop. There's still our property in there. Myself and another person are still under temporary, believe it or not, 7 years on, temporary accommodation that I would like to get housed, and I'm freaking tired. I want to get homed.
As soon as I hear.
7
Can I-
years.
Can I add something to that?
Sorry,
Vice, sorry, Adina.
Go on.
I'm vice chair of Grenfell Walk, but I'm also on the Memorial Commission. So with our conversation with Memorial Commission, within our meetings, we've always said that there's no decision that's going to be made in Grenfell Walk until we've made a decision on what's going to happen with the tower and what's going to happen around the memorial. I've told them this, and they promised us that no decision will be made until a decision has been made what they're going to do with the Memorial Commission. I just need to put you in that picture so you know what's. So if we to do future meetings with you, hoping we are, can we please put James Caspell with us and possibly Eleanor Davis or someone like that from the Memorial Commission, because it's important that gets sorted, because as well as the tower, to us Grenfell Walk is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are aware of that, because a lot of people, surprised 7 years down the line, don't know what's happening in Grenfell Walk. Nobody can go back into their properties. They're boarded up. I'm not sure if anybody knows, and it's really close. So Grenfell Tower, Grenfell Walk are exactly in the same position, although you have 33 flats in Grenfell Tower that didn't get burnt. Exact same thing with Grenfell Walk. 22 flats didn't get burnt, but nobody can go back into them. Just put you guys in the picture, just so you know. Like, if we could get a meeting with them, I think it's really important.
Just to be kept in the loop, because Lancaster West, especially James, is talking to Lancaster West about it.
I see.
But yeah, how come we're not being taught anything about it? But thank you, Claire. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
and thank you, Councillor McVeigh, and
Thank you,
we have to
Councillor.
see that meeting taking place
Yeah.
as soon as possible. But I think it's highlighted something really important that really should have been picked up before tonight, long before tonight. And I think we also have the recommendation around specifically the engagement on the inquiry report needs to specifically include, acknowledge Grenfell Walk. And I think that should be our recommendation.
The question I did want to ask.
Yeah.
Is did you get the letter from the leader?
I'm very sorry, Khadija.
So there was in the report, it refers to a letter from the leader to the bereaved and survivors and those in the immediate local community.
From Elizabeth Campbell.
Yeah, what was it regarding? Because we didn't get quite some.
So it was regarding the inquiry report coming through, and so I want to check you actually in that.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I personally did.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Probably because of that.
Is it the most recent one?
Yes.
Yeah, we got that. Yeah. And we're not saying we're not being kept in the loop in a lot of meetings and things like that and information. But what we're saying is, like, even like we when we had the meeting with Callum regarding this new ADR, at one stage, a dedicated service for 5 years, we were always called survivors. Now this new ADR, this restorative justice system. Now we're being told we're not survivors. And we were like, when we had a meeting with Callum, we were like, well, we're confused.
Which
Why?
comes down to money again.
Why for 5
Just so they
years?
can cut our funding, our help. Yeah, they don't want to be classed. We don't want to be classed as survivors no longer,
Yeah.
because they'd have to give us the exact amount of
Exact
money
money
and
at
exact
the time.
help that they do with the Grenfell survivors.
And how disgusting is that? For 5 years, you put us on a dedicated service. You gave us exactly the same as the bereaved and survivors. It was a service that first of its kind, that was running smoothly, stirred by even myself. I was on the panel, Hannah was on the panel, just everything went really well. And then it came to an end. This new system came in. We've sat down with Callum Wilson in a meeting where he turned around and said, right, Grenfell Walk's only getting two and a half grand, while bereaved survivors are getting 5. What's happened? Did we do anything? Oh no, you're no longer survivors. We're now going to call you residents who fled out of their homes in the night.
And mind you, we didn't ask to be called survivors in the beginning.
We never
They
asked.
labelled us that.
Yeah.
We always said that we're Grenfell
Grenfell Walk from the
yeah.
beginning.
To make it easier for them and more, so that they don't have to do as much work and consider us.
Yeah.
They put us in that same category as Grenfell. But again, like my mum said, when it came back down to money and distributing it, let's pull Grenfell Walk. No, you can't label us.
And again, like I said, they dropped us from the word survivors, and it's been constantly like this. We don't want to be called anything. We just lost our home. We don't want to be called any survivors or blue. We don't want that. We're tired of tennis. Yes, you are a bereaved. No, you're not. You're not a survivor. Yes, you are. No, you're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not.
We shouldn't have
Guys,
to,
man.
we shouldn't have to fight all the time
No.
to
Yeah,
get
that's
basic support. You
Absolutely.
know, we've been asked to be put in this position. It's happened because of negligence, like it said in the report. So if we want to go back to the Grenfell inquiry, it states exactly the way in which RBKC treated tenants and treated the local community, including Grenfell Walk. You know, we didn't ask to be put in this position, but we need support, and we're not getting the right support because you guys, like you said, playing tennis with us. You know, you're not being clear. Just speak
We're
to us.
just not
clearly.
being taken serious, and we're not getting the support and help from the council, from this new restorative justice system. We're not getting help nowhere. We're not getting the support, and we're not getting nothing, and we're tired. So I'm sorry to keep dragging on. I know
No,
this meeting.
Thank you for coming here and
Yeah.
telling us. I think we have commitment from the lead member who's going to meet with you.
Yeah.
And I think James with you.
That'd be great.
And maybe the lead member for communities in terms of support.
But I also think you've raised a point there about the restorative justice.
Yeah,
I would take that.
really.
I
That
would take
slapped
that
us in the face.
personally. Yeah. if that's
And that
concerning.
was a time when we had all the residents, the elderly, and people facing health, couple of people, a person that had cancer, to be told with Callum Wilson in our face, no, you're not getting the same support as everyone else. We're dropping you down. We tried to fight it. We tried to have a meeting with Callum and think nobody's budging.
Yeah,
So
we're
again,
in this grey area where we
Yeah.
don't fit under Brentford Tower, but we don't fit under community. So what do we get? What are we entitled
So
to?
you get
You know,
There's been in previous meetings before where we were specifically being told that actually you're getting help from the DS or the RJ, whatever we call it now. But so what do you want? So it's like we're not being helped as a survivor, we're not being helped as a community, but because we fall under the bracket of get help from the RJ, but it's not the full support that everyone has it. So you know what I'm saying? So a lot of people, and I'm talking about people from the members of the council, don't even understand our story, they don't even know our story.
Yeah.
oh yeah, sorry, by the way, someone who was on holiday and came back and saw their flat burnt in the tower gets the £5,000. People that were abroad, that's the bracket. People that were abroad that weren't there, never suffered the trauma, never ran out for their life, never saw what happened. Yes, okay, their flat got burnt down. That's you're going to get taken care of. But to get that help for the next 4 years, when you don't have as much trauma as people that ran for their lives from Grenfell Walk, that's bloody ridiculous.
it's really important that the restorative justice programme be delivered in a way that is fair and that has confidence of.
Well, it's not.
Well,
Even though they decided to get a
exactly.
scrutiny,
And so-
we went to the scrutiny
Yeah.
people.
So I will be raising that one. That's an action for me. I will be raising that one directly with that team.
Would that be good? Thank you very much.
And hopefully,
And apologies for
No.
overtaking this meeting. I know you have other stuff
Yeah.
to discuss. And
I would just like to say thank you all very, very much for coming.
Yeah.
You've raised some really upsetting, I think, things tonight that really do need to be taken on by the council.
Right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any officers speaking to this paper? Talking about gender item A4.
So I wasn't going to say very much about my introduction because really all this paper does is set out the process, and I'm very happy to answer questions about that. As you said, Chair, the kind of the substance of the implications for the council is not going to start. Especially that starts at Oakland Street. We can see next week. So if you've got any questions or, as you say, recommendations about the kind of process and the steps and that, I'm happy to do my best to answer them or to take more questions from the team.
Thank you very much. Members of the committee, do you have any questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. On page 24 and 25, there's a timeline set out for meetings. And I query, or I just wonder, is one of them drop-in sessions for residents at the leisure centre enough and one in Chelsea? So I appreciate there are independent meetings for the bereaved and survivors, but I was just wondering if there are enough drop-ins.
Well, so there's the two drop-in sessions, as you say, on the 19th in the north and the 24th in the south, and then the public meetings on 7th October and 7th November are also open to all residents, and then meetings separate to those are being organised for bereaved survivors. I think it's fair to say that this is what's in place now, but we've always got the option to assess interest and demand, if you see what I mean, and add in additional ones if that feels necessary during the process. So this is what's arranged at the moment.
How do you propose to essentially tell people about these meetings or get the message out?
Yeah, so we are a range of measures, kind of broadcast measures like the council website, the email, the weekly news email that we send out, social media and so on. But also we're sending targeted messages to the groups that we think are particularly interested, so people who live in the vicinity of the tower, and of course the Greenland survivors. That's not work that's being led from my department. What I might do, if you're interested, I'm very happy to ask the Grenfell Partnerships team to put together a kind of a detailed description of that effort if you're interested in seeing it.
That's very good.
Thanks, Chair. Paragraph 4.17 talks about the inquiry team itself will be carrying out some engagement. As we're talking about the process, would you be able to explain what the role of the inquiry team itself, I don't know if that's something you can do, is now that the final report has been published, but how that links in with the activities that the council will do in terms of engagement?
So my understanding is that work being done by the inquiry team is really what they see as the process of finishing their task, i.e. really to explain the report, to help them explain the report. And so what they are, having made their recommendations and published their report, they're in a way the baton passes to us and the others named in the report to then pick up the recommendations and move forward. So I think those two processes are probably best seen as quite independent from each other, if that makes sense.
That's the way.
The format of these meetings, can you expand on how, you've got the meeting, but what is the framework for it, and what engagement, what are you going to assess as being successful? Because they're going to be people who are going to come, they're going to, for example, these women here are going to express why they don't appear to have been considered. I'd like to know a little bit about how it's going to work, what your expectations are of what they are, and how you're going to respond to people if they come up with something considered on your agenda.
So I don't have a kind of detailed answer to that question just at the moment. I think the finishing touches have been put to it. We are certainly planning both the drop-in sessions and the slightly more set piece meetings to have a range of council staff there. I think which I think is kind of forms part of the answer to your question, which is I think inevitably at occasions like that, there is, if you like, particularly for those more set piece meetings, it'll be important for us to be flexible enough to have kind of private side conversations and find all the ways that we can to kind of gather people's feedback, even if, for example, they're not comfortable speaking in front of a large group. There is, as you imply in your question, I think, going to be a very kind of significant task of gathering all the input, however it's given. Some of it will be very directly anchored in elements of the report, others of it probably not. And for us to then take it away and synthesize that, you'll see in the schedule that there's a kind of cluster of meetings in the final part of September and early October, and then a pause, and then a further meeting, a cluster of meetings at the start of November. And the purpose of that pause is that the council team will kind of spend that time synthesizing the feedback from that first round of initial engagement, come up with a kind of a proposition for what the council's response might look like, and then go back to discuss, based on that, to kind of feedback. Here's how we've interpreted what you said, and here's how our response is shaping up. Let's do a further round of engagement based on that, if you see what I mean. So there's two bites at the cherry. The first being slightly more open-ended, although it will be based on the work that the council have done by that point already to kind of assess its own view of the implications of the report. And then the second round will be more focused on this kind of emerging thinking as we head towards that final decision in November, December, the final kind of response.
Are you anticipating, therefore, to have another set of recommendations that might come out or be part of an appendix?
I don't think it's I don't think it's recommendations. I think what I don't want to say. I don't want to speculate too much about the format of the council response, because part of what we're doing is going into this process in order to kind of work with the community to define together what that will look like. I think it's less about recommendations and more about commitments that the council is going to make about what it's going to do for its own part, both to implement those elements of the recommendations that applies to the council and to the sector more generally. But also, I think there's a great deal in the report which is not explicitly articulated in the recommendations, but which nevertheless gives clear signals of things that we need to consider and think about in the context of change. So I think the kind of it will talk about what the council proposes to do, but that won't be rooted solely in the recommendations of the report, if that makes sense.
Councillor Rossi.
Question, Dan. So the purpose, will lead members be there? I mean, council officers will be there. Will lead members be there? And is the purpose of the meeting to listen to what's been said, or to inform people of, you know, what's going to happen? What's the purpose?
So short part of the answer is that yes, my understanding is that lead members are going to be there. I can't, and it's in a way, I'm sorry, it's a version of the same question I gave to Councillor Wade. Precise format, I think, yet to be determined. I think, but the principal purpose of the events is to hear from those members of the public or the audience likely to be present. So I think we can kind of confidently say that while there may be some kind of initial kind of framing and reflections on kind of where the council's got to in its own thinking, the predominant part of the meetings will be given over to receiving the feedback and the input from the community, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I have a couple which may be more properly addressed to the lead member, I'm not sure. But I was wondering, do we have a commitment from the leadership team? I think this speaks to the point, one of the points that Samia made so eloquently. Do we have a commitment from the leadership team that they will be taking on board and responding to whatever feedback may be gathered in these engagements? Or to put it as Samia said it, why should we attend and why should we trust you?
Honestly, I mean, the answer to that question is definitely yes, as far as I'm concerned. I think that's a commitment not just on behalf of each, and I'm slightly looking over my shoulder at the members who are here, but I can see them nodding. But I would also go a bit further than that, which is to say that that's a kind of very straightforward commitment that comes from officers in the council too, if you see what I mean, that we take that enormously seriously. And it's partly because the commitments that we've made to participation and kind of working jointly with our community, with the community since Grenfell and the Charter with participation and so on, are things that we take very seriously. But also looking at it another way, we give ourselves a better chance of success if we do this together. So we're grateful for the help, if that makes sense, in interpreting it and interpreting the best way to move forward.
And I think we do have to salute the residents and the community for their repeated leaps of faith that they have taken with this council over the last 7 years, because they had no choice. And I think we do also have to acknowledge how much they have been let down in doing that. So I think we need to acknowledge that it's reasonable for them to have doubts. But thank you for that answer. And then I just want to I just had one more, which is about the council's final response to the report, which according to the governance section on page 25, will be going to be proposed by the leader of the council at the full council meeting on 27th of November, which presumably will be put to a council vote.
I too assume that that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's what I've been told. It says here for debate and agreement.
Yes.
And I just want for people to consider to what extent is that meaningful, given the very large majority that the leadership team has on the council, and try to be hopeful that the council will be able to arrive at a response which respects the dignity of the residents and their elected representatives.
Yeah, I accept the point you're making. I think what I'd say is that the intention that sits behind the early conversation with overview and scrutiny committee, the public events that we've been talking about, is kind of in recognition, of course, by the time it gets to that meeting, there's it is what it is in front of the council, and that the real work to bring all the different perspectives in it, including from opposition councillors and from the wider community, is the work that's done in the run up to that, so that by the time we get to full council, there's a kind of degree of confidence that it's been a participatory process.
I think language sometimes does matter, and I think we need to acknowledge the reality that the ward councillors of North Kensington, for the most part, are what might be called opposition councillors. But I would very strongly hope that that wasn't going to be a relevant factor, and that the council leadership would be able to see past that, and that respect through the ward councillors the dignity of the residents, which hasn't always been the case hasn't very much been the case for the last 7 years. So that, I think, is another aspect to change, and the ward councillors themselves are having to take a leap of faith to engage in this process, and I think it's important to acknowledge
I think a debate, I'm not sure about the voting, that is something, obviously not my decision, but we didn't have a debate at the time. So I think a full debate on this is actually a very important thing to do.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. You are correct, and I think it's also very important that the full council meeting in October.
Yeah, exactly. There's two opportunities.
Yes, but I think it's also very important for residents and the affected community to be able to have the public speaking session at that council meeting given over entirely to their input. And so, thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions?
I just want to follow up on the comment that Dan said earlier, is that the earlier meetings will be for more picking up the information and comments, whereas the later ones might be for
playing it back and
Correct.
showing, yeah.
And so I think it's very important that we get that message out to the community, that it's not just to come to one meeting, it's actually a conversation to come along
Yeah,
to
that's helpful.
each one.
Sorry, can
We have two hands up. Mimi, I think
Go ahead,
was your
sorry.
hand first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, really
And I'm
quickly.
going to ask you to be very brief.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in relation to the engagement process that that is intended to be carried out. I have a concern in that it's quite important that the engagement process isn't just consultation process, and and to make very clear actually that it's actually a consultation process, and that residents are always going to be one removed from actual decision making, because this is the type of involvement that has been historically implemented, which again puts us back into the position of the council not listening and not making decisions with residents. I bring this up because on the intended engagement plan, it mentions that other interested residents. I'm from Wales End, but the experiences that you guys have been having have been exactly the same ones that we've been having recently and always.
There's a culture.
Yeah, the culture's there, and the paradigm shift hasn't been done, and that's ultimately what needs to happen. So I'm just want to make sure that the language that is used to describe the type of engagement that's going to happen is accurate, that they don't call it co-production when it isn't, or co-design when it isn't, that there is clear understanding about the value and worth that's going to be given to the residents' input, because actually the process that usually gets done devalues the efforts and the input that residents give. And that Dan didn't answer the question about the outcomes. Councillor Wade asked, you know, what does success look like? Because you didn't answer that, and certainly from experience, it's something that tends to be quite wishy-washy. So I think from the off chance, from the start, that those things need to be absolutely clear.
Thank you very much. Do you want to respond to that?
Well, just on that, it's absolutely right that I didn't respond to that part of Councillor Wade's question about what success looked like. Sorry, that wasn't a deliberate evasion. I just slipped my mind. I think I don't think we've got a clean and clear answer to that question that I can give you this evening. Clearly, part of it is measured by the level of confidence that of shared confidence, officers, members of all parties, the community, that we get to the end of November with, that it feels like it's been a participatory process, that it's a process that passes some of the tests that have been described. I don't think I can set a test now with a box that we should say has been ticked or crossed. But I'm happy to take that challenge away, if you like, and to discuss with the team whether we want to try and articulate something clearly on that front so that we can assess how we're doing as we go through.
I think that might be useful because there have been a lot of conversations, a lot of engagements. People have told their stories, but actually part of the healing, the confidence building is actually if you set out some standards of what people can expect, however simple it is, what are they going to get? They need to know how you have been interpreted the consultation, engagement, whatever you want to. It's because sometimes it can get misconstrued. Somebody says something, but it's not fully understood. And therefore, when you come to a solution making, that's not incorporated.
Thank you.
This paper focuses on the public consultation with the survivors, of course, and residents, and of course that's incredibly important. What it doesn't really talk about is how the council itself will be digesting the report internally and considering. The report itself is a considerable document covering quite a wide range of areas, and some will be more relevant to the council than others. How will that actually be filtered through all the departments, all the officers who have day jobs? How will we make sure that report actually is disseminated and digested and responded to in a genuine sense throughout the authority?
So it's a really important question, really important part of the process. I don't see it as separate from what we're talking about, what's in this paper. I see it as another limb of the same process. The council's response that is taken to full council at the end of November will just as it's informed by community participation the way described here, will also be informed by a parallel process of engagement with staff on what goes into that document. But alongside that, to answer the other part of your question, so I've already started my part with housing and social investment, so that's housing management, housing needs, and social investment property team. We've already started the work of sifting through the report and pulling out the bits for us, as I say, both directly from the recommendations, but also more widely in the report. There's lots of stuff in the report that doesn't come into the recommendations, particularly to do with kind of culture and practice, which we need to reflect on and incorporate into our work. And the way that we're doing that in the council is making it incumbent on every service, every department in the council to do that work itself, if you see what I mean. So I would slightly resist the idea, as it were, that this is pulling us away from our day job. This is the day job. Integrating this into the way that we think about safety, the way that we think about the relationship between us and residents and so on is absolutely fundamental to kind of how we function as an organisation. So that, and part of our job as a leadership team, I guess, is to make sure that is how the whole organisation is thinking.
Cesar, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Dan a question. Having meetings with Callum to do with this restore justice thing, we had put to him, I'm not sure if anyone's aware, the dedicated service now is coming to an end. Majority of the people that are bereaved survivors are not going to take their key workers, which means that what we're going to find ourselves, and we put this to Callum, is as of yet, as you keep saying, we're having constant meetings, we're engaging. As of yet, we're now in September, and it's the last time now for us to have key workers. What is going to happen to housing? Because we put to Callum on a couple of occasions, myself and Hannah, that once the dedicated service is finished, what's going to happen? Because we all had a key worker, and we went through our key workers to help us with everything. So now that this service is finished, a lot of the residents are feeling now they're going to be on their own. So I like now, if I was to go and do something to do with my housing, I wouldn't know. I go to my key worker. So a lot of people don't know where to go for information, where to go for services, where to go for the help, because now we're in September, the key workers are going to come to an end. And as of yet, I'd like to ask you, where are these meetings to let us know what kind of service we're going to get, what support we're going to get? As now, there's about 300 people that are waiting to get rehoused. And everyone's frantic, as in, why are you not having these meetings to discuss with us the support and services we're going to get when this new system? So I'd just like to put it to you, what?
Thanks. I think rather than try and answer that now, I think I need to take that as a challenge for my team working.
Oh, right. So this is not part of.
Well,
I must seem to be answering all these.
So you brought really another.
So yeah, basically going back to the same thing.
Yeah.
We seem to be. I'm not going to lie to you, Claire. The amount of meetings that I've gone to thousands of meetings, and I'm tired because the moment I go through that door, I don't hear nothing else again. So we keep talking about. You guys need to listen to us. You guys need to engage with us. You need to keep us in the loop. Make us feel like, after this meeting, things are going to be done. You are taking us seriously. We are, and this is it. We keep going back to the same thing. We're just not.
So I wouldn't at all give you the impression that I don't take that question seriously. It's just that I'm not in a position to answer it right here, right now, with the information that I've got.
But this is it. This shows you again. We're in September. Everyone's losing their key workers, and nothing's been set up for the 1,000+ bereaved and survivors that are going to be left on their own to fend for themselves, and one of the key things for everybody is housing. And as of yet, I've not seen one letter from the council, showing any support as to what is the next plan for all these bereaved and survivors moving forward without their key workers.
They have said that they'll give us a list of email and phone numbers and who to contact.
And when was that meeting we had with Callum? That was 4 months ago.
So, Aziza, I will take this up as personal action for me to do that.
Right.
Thank you.
So I was just taking it back to again, as in, like the lady said, that we keep talking, we keep having these meetings, but.
And we go around and say.
Can I just add that beyond the future of the dedicated service, within the Grenfell rehousing policy, which still hasn't been reviewed, there's tailored housing support. So irrespective of whether key workers are no longer funded, it is within the Grenfell rehousing policy that dedicated housing support. So that's irrespective of the discussions with housing. That needs to be checked because that's not coming to an end.
Thank you.
If it's in the policy.
Thank you, Samia. Thank you very much. I'm just making a note of that. That is another action for me. Thank you. So I think in that case we can move on to the next paper, but I would like to thank once again the members of the public for your contributions. Yes, on the recommendations, before we move on then, what do we have? So I think first of all, we need to understand how Grenfell Walk is fitting into this engagement plan. I think that the members are going to take that away. We also wonder whether it's going to be flexible enough and responsive enough to the input that you have. And I understand that the later meetings will be picking up on what's been heard before and playing that back. We also have a commitment from the leadership team that they will be taking on board and responding to the feedback received within this engagement. Haven't I forgotten anything else? I think that's all. So thank you very much, Dan, for coming, and thank you again for your very valuable input. Thanks. So campaign 5, which is Hazelwood and Adair Towers. Welcome, Sock, and welcome, Doug. This report describes the current capital delivery project related to the refurbishment of Hazelwood and Adair Towers, including focus on quality of works and procurement of the main contractor. The committee are invited to consider whether it wishes to make any comments or recommendations to the leadership team regarding the report's contents, including whether the process in place to monitor and quality assure capital works is sufficient or could be improved. And once again, I would like to invite any residents present to share their experiences with the committee. I was expecting that we may have more residents. I am aware of concerns that residents have been raising around these works for quite a long time, but I see we don't have anyone here for that. So in that case, I would like to invite you.
Thank you, Chair.
And Doug to introduce the paper.
Thank you. I'm going to, Doug is all over this. So, but I just want to just frame it a little bit. This was our first major project post Grenfell, as the report states, about background taking off the cladding. And we absolutely accept we did not get everything right. And I think there was quite a fast kind of emergency response in some of our decisions. And again, the paper talks about the lessons we are learning from this, and particularly in light of, again, the paper talks about all the other major works we're doing across the borough and how it's absolutely essential that we learn from each one. And sadly, you know, there always are learnings to be had. And in particular, in this one, and Doug's got details of what specific ones we want to really focus on.
So what I would say, if I may, Chair, this is still a live project, so I don't want to prejudice anything that may happen in the future. We are aware, quite clearly, I've met with the residents group at least on 4 occasions, that there are issues with this particular contractor, and it was a design build, if you like, contract. It was involving cladding. And whilst ostensibly, if you look at Adair and Hazelwood from the outside now, it looks absolutely fantastic. There are details around that quality which give us some quite considerable cause and concern. They're detailed in pages 32 and 33, and we're working through those quality aspects with the contractor. This, though, as I keep saying, is a live project. So ultimately, we're under contract, and it's the contract that we're using in terms of ensuring that we get the outcome that we're expecting. But we are where we are, and I think the report, as best it can, sets out how we got to this position, but also where we've taken some of the early learning. I mean, that learning isn't all just now, because this is quite one of the things with this contract is it's taken a lot longer than they originally promised they would take to deliver it. So we've embedded quite a bit of that into what we do going forward. But I'm more than happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I'll start with Councillor Wade.
I'm intrigued. And I think that there was a report about procurement a number of years ago, where it analysed some of the areas where we seem to be falling down. So I'd like you to expand about actually the capacity of the department
is commissioning the work, whether they actually have expertise, experience, because we're either, if something's going wrong with the specification or the tendering, the oversight of the projects. And it just seems to be we seem to be making the same mistakes yet again. That and this applies to some of the other contracts that actually the council have, where it seems to be remote control management of our stock. And ultimately, it's the residents that are actually having the problems. So
in terms of procurement, I can answer that. We have a procurement team that are fully qualified.
So why are we having these mistakes?
So the fact that I don't think there was a mistake in the procurement. I think that if you've got a contractor that doesn't conform to contract, you have a contract which you can then enforce. We're in the period of dealing with that. But sorry, can I answer the question? So if we're in a position to, our job is to ensure that the contract is enforced. There will be contractors that say they will do X and actually they decide to do Y. The purpose of the contract is to make sure that we can enforce that. We cannot vouch 100% for every company that goes through the procurement, because procurement rules are not about the ethos of the company. They're about, they will demonstrate the quality, and we have 60-40%, 60 quality, 40 price, but they will always get contractors that do that. What's important for us is that how we enforce that contract, and we are in that position at the present moment in time. I accept that the residents of Hazelwood and Adair have had to put up with shoddy quality from the contractor, and our job is to enforce that.
But it would appear that us as a company have employed people externally to manage the project. And this is what I mean about remote, that you employ somebody, they're meant to be overseeing the project, and then you could get a contractor who will then use subcontractors that you can't actually, you lose control of it. So I come back to the point, is the department that is actually commissioning the work sufficiently resourced? Or is there just the market or the budget that is constraining your choice of contractor?
I'd say our procurement team is sufficiently resourced.
So why are we having these problems?
So I will never sit here and guarantee that we won't have these problems again. What I'm saying is the procurement process that's set out that the local authority has to follow will not always give you 100% that you will employ a contractor that doesn't want to behave in a particular way. What's important is you've got the right tools and levers to deal with that. And we are still in a live situation.
All right, but we're looking at this report, which is about 2 specific projects. But this does apply to some of the other projects that are going on, which council has commissioned. Yeah. For example, the ones in Earl's Court, which have not actually, we've had problems with, and there were actually difficulties actually going back through the training to actually make sure that something's done. I mean, this is what I mean. There's a mechanism, isn't there, when you contract people. It's just a bit too remote.
Okay, I hear you, and I'm more than happy for you to meet or speak to our to our head of capital, James Heritage, or alternatively the procurement manager, which will explain exactly the framework within which local authorities have to operate in terms of the capital programme. I feel most of the contracts that we've had have worked really, really well, but there will always be occasions where, and that's the purpose of having a tight team and a tight contract, where you can bear pretty close.
Thank you. Linda, I think we need to make progress now. Thank you very much for your question. Would any other member of the committee?
Excuse my squeaky voice. Can you just give us either as a percentage or number term the number of complaints? So I've got the number for the window trim, 49.
Well, the window trim of 49 people that wanted it changed. because the window trim was not put in as it was properly designed. What I would say, complaint-wise, it's probably official complaints is probably quite low in a handful, but in reality, dissatisfaction in terms of us just finding defects in people's properties, it's in the significant majority. I think it's around about 80% of the properties we found had defects in terms of the work. And that's what we're in the middle of trying to get rectified and enforced. I make no bones about this. I don't think the company have acted in the way that they wish to, but in the right way. But I'm going to need to be careful what I say because I'm in a public arena and this is a live contract. That's what I've just got to keep remembering, because our job is to ensure that we don't pay the things that we don't think are liable to be paid. The contractor clearly will have a different view about what they think maybe we need to work that through as part of this contract. And I brought it here because I was asked to, but it's quite unusual because we're actually in that live situation. That isn't to say, and I do not want to say to the residents of Hazelwood and Adair that they not had to put up with a very long period of works which should have been sorted out earlier, and indeed the quality has not been where we wanted. We are absolutely happy to admit that. Our job is to try and put that right, and we're still in the midst of doing that.
Yes, honestly.
Yes, if I could draw your attention to 5.5.4, basically the length of time. I would have thought that investigative work is really important, and it was felt here that there was not enough time for that. I would have thought that if you don't do that properly, the rest is not going to work out so well.
So that's why this is a definite learning point. So this situation was that we had to remove expanded polystyrene cladding on the outside because it was combustible, and so it's not going to do that. That therefore left the buildings exposed, and so there was quite a lot of pressure on us to come up with a solution as quickly as we could. Unfortunately, the engagement ended up with a particular contractor, which has been, it's taken longer than I would have thought. I need to be careful with my language. So it's taken longer than we would have thought. So that's why the investigative work was probably short. But also, we were sort of thrown into this. This didn't go through our framework. It was the very first project. The removal of but as soon as we removed it, we then had to do something. So that's what put us into that position. And certainly getting the specification right before you commission people is exactly where we need to be. And if that goes wrong, then that does lead us to all sorts of
problems. I think we could accept that within the building industry, use of subcontractors, subcontractors is common. Possibly we can accept that the council can all get to a certain degree of control. Do again in contracts, and I'm sure we do have sufficient clauses about what sort of quality subcontractors need to meet. And I think the question really is about the perception as to whether the council is actually enforcing those contracts and enforcing against the bad quality. And you can even accept that things can go wrong in projects, and projects do overrun, and that can happen. But if there is then the perception, possibly the reality, and people dispute that nothing is being done about it, that's where we end up in this situation.
I get that 100%, because what we can say publicly around something where you're in a contractual discussion, I would say, or negotiation with a particular contractor is quite limited, because what we don't want to be in is a position where we prejudice any case or future litigation that may happen. So that's sometimes some of the issues. We have, this isn't the only one where we've got discussions around the contract, and but most of them run reasonably smoothly. Sometimes they don't. This, I will put hand on heart, has not been smooth since the contract started on site back in 2021.
What kind of communication has the council had with residents about the situation?
So we have had a number of public meetings. Well, we had public meetings with the residents. And at the moment, and in essence, because things were pretty shoddy, even, like myself, Councillor Bay, went and met the residents. I've met them on a number of occasions. And it's clear that we've still got things to fix within their property. And that's why, it may be that you might want to come back to this in a year. I'm not saying that, this could, if we end up in a dispute situation, it could end up taking some time to resolve. I don't want to say too much. We have been writing to the residents. I mean, the residents there were clearly quite rightly frustrated because what they don't want the contractor to be around anymore. They've been in and out of their properties a number of times. They've been on site. Well, we're coming up 2 years beyond the date when they initially were meant to be off site. So we do accept that in this particular case, it's been pretty awful, and we are discussing with them what the solution to that is. So they're aware of the situation. It's just that clearly, if we can't see when they're going to, and we've got a new design, if you like, for the balcony door that we're going to trial in October, which hopefully will stop some of the problems. We only see that because the balcony door has created a step which is way too big.
But obviously that's not in every single flat.
No, it's not.
So it's the list. It's just quite odd the way the whole thing is, because this balcony threshold is a big issue. In some flats it's like too big, and in other flats it's completely fine. So this is why the team has gone into every single flat, and rightly residents have had enough.
So we have been right, but it's really the frustration in my view that it just needs to end, and we get that 100%. We are doing our best with the contractor who we sadly employed in some cases because it's taken too long to get done. But we're in that situation, and the idea is that we enforce the contract.
Councillor Woods, do you have
What changes are you going to make to the way you go forward on future contracts?
So now we have a framework agreement where we have a number of, so this was a one-off project because it was specialist, it was around, and so we've got a framework agreement. We're now on our second framework. We called it Project Union because it was about bringing all the team together to get it delivered. And we now have a set of contractors per lot, depending on what we are going to deliver. Where we can build proper relationships with those contractors.
We have like a shortlist.
So
the procurement process is kind of, made easier, isn't it?
It's made easier, but they will only get future work if they deliver good work. That makes sense. So that's how it.
So have you changed the procedures about whether or not it's somebody within the council that's actually checking work rather than a third party?
So we have
because in this case you had a third party who are acting as.
We have an in-house clerk of works, but they are predominantly it is done by the third party. In fact, what we're using that in-house to check on the third party. But that's
yeah.
If I've got that wrong, correct me.
But what surveyor likes to check the works. It's basically we have a clerk of works externally, but we also have us as the project manager, as well as a building surveyor from our consultants that check the work as well.
So you have one surveyor and you have one clerk of work, and you've got to.
No, there's a team of two clerks of works.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of work to do. Everybody acknowledges that this is just.
So
there is.
Perhaps we could arrange a meeting with Councillor Wade and James Heritage from the Major Works team, because I think that would be quite important.
Because I appreciate there's been a change in committee members because James did come here earlier this year to explain where we were at on the overall capital programme, and I think when you're discussing the work plan, maybe having a capital programme here on a regular basis would be a really good thing to have.
But thank you, Councillor McVeigh, for that suggestion, and I'm sure that Councillor Ward would like to pick that up and perhaps some other member of the committee also. Councillor Gardner.
On page 33, you talk about various things that aren't quite right at the moment. I wonder if you could give us a status update on the placement, and about the threshold sounds as if it's still not resolved, but the others, you refer to items being identified as problems, but I'm not clear on have they been fixed or when are they scheduled to be fixed.
Okay, so because this is a status update, I'm sorry. So where the windows have needed to be done, they've been done.
So they're all complete.
The window, do you think?
As in the window repairs, the trim.
Not the trim,
The
the window
replacement
replacement.
incorrectly.
The window repairs, there's still some outstanding where we're getting access, so our resident liaison officer is trying to get access to about, I think there's 21 in one block and 24 in another. So there's approximately 45 we still need to get into. And we've sent 2 letters so far, so we're sending another letter to them just to double check. We need to survey all of them before we can sign them off.
And also door knocking, they've been going around, bumped into resident liaison officers, going up and down, ringing on the bells, door knocking, trying to get access, as well as doing matters.
So can I just say something? So whilst it might not seem like a big defect to the resident in some cases, for us, we know it's a defect because we've inspected it and we want to get it fixed. And that sometimes means that the resident will accept it.
And sorry, trim and 49 cases.
It's up to the individuals. What we've fitted the windows where instead of a window sill, but so we said we're not going to force this on you. We might be happy with that, or if you want us to rectify or make it level, we will come in and do it. And so 49 and something like that.
And when do you expect those works to be done?
Currently, we're looking to send them the last letter now to residents for them to opt to have this done. Some people have refused it, but a lot of people have really welcomed it and really satisfied with the additional trim.
It's a detail, I've seen the image of it, and it's kind of an upstand rather than a sill, and some people.
One final question, key personnel clauses. So key personnel clause, you talk here about the fact that you suffered on this contract because the site foreman kept changing. Have we, in terms of your lessons learned, are we now using a key personnel clause to ensure that we keep continuity of key personnel?
So that's very difficult for a contractor to adhere to because they operate in a market where people may leave. You can't say that you can't have a law that restricts the fact that someone has a freedom movement in the employment market. What you can ask for is that you have people of the right quality in the right jobs with the right qualifications.
I beg to differ.
Can I just add something? Sorry, Joanna. What you can also ask for is that when staff do change, there is adequate handover. Because what we see in this report is things happen because there was change of staff and they weren't aware. So that is something that you, I think, could perhaps have support.
Yeah.
I think you can actually initially name somebody and then you can have your replacement clause. I appreciate you can't hold them into a job forever a day, but I believe you can put an express name in it and then you can seek similar or better qualifications for replacement.
So let me take that away. And if that's something we haven't got in there, I think obviously having continuity is a really good thing. We can definitely take that away and see what we can do. But I think there is something in there that is really not quite. So let me share what we've got.
I just had a couple of points I wanted to make, if I may, before we move on. First of all, there's quite a lot in here about lessons learned, which is good, but it's a phrase that often in a lot of contexts we hear a lot. And one thing that is, I think, positive about this report is it actually does detail not only what those lessons were, but also what's been done about them. And too often we don't have that. But in that spirit of learning, I wanted to raise sort of mention a couple of, because there's a lot of other capital works going on around the borough. And I do hear from officers that this learning is being applied on current works, for instance, at Silchester and Clay, I think, as well. But I was at a meeting earlier today on where there are works on a building in my own ward, where there has been sheeting put up all around the building.
Yeah, I know which one it is.
And this is having an impact on residents. Residents were not involved at any point or even told that this was going to happen. And the situation could have been avoided, but then if residents' voice had been considered something that needed to be listened to.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we look at how do we actually embed this learning, because obviously issues around a contract is something that we need to make sure don't happen again. But also we need to be mindful. This paper is written very much from point of view of the council doing job, but I think we also need to make sure that we're also focusing on the point of view of the residents, as you've mentioned, Doug, on the other end of this, having their lives and homes blighted too often when it's something that we could have perhaps adjusted at the start.
So I spotted the sheeting day when I was up there, so I know exactly what you're talking about, because I've got an eye what we've done. And I would take that back, because you're right, whoever thought that was a good idea. It's bad enough having central limits up without blocking out the lights.
But I think there's a learning point there, which is the value of residents' voice, because they know the impact that these things don't have on them. And when we're at the stage of attracting even, or when we're at the stage of scoping works, we need to make sure that those voices are included before decisions are made, hopefully.
And just so
yeah.
I just had a flip side of the coin and say thank you on behalf of England House Residents Association, who is about to do some major work on doors for fire. And we had a very valuable meeting with the Resident Association there, fire officer, to explain why it was going the way it was. And the feedback was very positive. So there's definitely some lessons like that.
I'm pleased to hear that, given some of the discussions you had in the past, so that's good.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think we've had a quite useful and productive discussion there, and I think it's been really helpful. I know this might be unusual given the current status, but it's been really helpful, I think, for the committee to see what's gone on, especially in terms of the concerns that residents have been raising for so long, and also that things are being done about it. I think we still need to keep an eye on what's going to happen with the carbon threshold, which I see remains unresolved. But things do keep us updated on that. We've talked about procurement capacity, and Linda's going to meet with James Heritage, and I think I might be interested in joining that meeting myself, actually. We talked about the number of complaints, the number of defects, the percentage of defects, which is high. If I can,
It's very different.
yeah. And again, it's good that we have asked questions, I think, about meeting with residents, and we just need to, I think, keep stressing that at every turn, how important that is. And we talked also about the status of repairs, and we have some feedback on that. So thank you very much. Thank you both for coming.
Sorry, can I just ask a question quickly?
Yes, you may. You may all speak through the chair.
Chair.
Just me.
Yes, I was
And
going
I'm
to say.
saying yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Claire. I'm sorry, Chair. This is in reference to contracts and also the question that Councillor Wade was asking in terms of the standards of refurbishments, repairs, capital works. On Wells End, we discovered a lot of internal waterfalls that had been neglected for many, many years and had not been picked up, ignored, or just sort of hidden into the secret garden. The standard by which residents are being asked whether they're happy or not with repairs a resident was going to come today to actually explain this. A woman who had had water raining in for 3 years, not being repaired. Finally, the water stopped coming in. Thank you for that. But then she was asked what she thought of the repairs. She was just so happy that the water wasn't coming through that at that time she said, "Oh no, I'm very happy." Subsequently, looked at actually the standard of works delivered and realized, actually, I don't have a measurement, and actually I'm not very happy because the council have caused damage that hasn't been repaired because it's all of a sudden not their responsibility, even though it was their neglect that caused the issues. So I think that what hasn't been spoken about is how are residents, or anyone for that matter, supposed to assess and know whether a refurbishment, a repair, or whatever is the case that a contractor has delivered meets the standard. So the issue here isn't about the use of subcontractors. The issue here is what are the standards that anyone that does any work within the local authority that we're paying for meets the standards that we expect. And that hasn't been resolved here or agreed. And I think that that's fundamental, and it is fundamental in the face of everything else that's going on in the country.
Thank you, Amy, for raising that. And Councillor McVeigh, did you want to say something on that?
Well, I think repairs is a huge part of what's leading to the major works, and Doug's done a big study on, sadly, where all the repairs had not been done in the past. And when we inherited it from TMO, we did a survey, and we thought initially there was £80 million worth of repairs needing, and we found out it's more like about £400 million. So we acknowledge that we have a long way to go, and we're really sorry. People should not be having multiple rooms, obviously. But I think your question about the standard of the monitoring of the repairs is very important. And I know that in some instances, we get it really right, and in some instances we don't get it right at all. And those are the ones where we need to work out how we can come back and get it right on the specific repair, and make sure the resident doesn't feel bad about saying this isn't up to standard. Because I think that's the kind of another bit, isn't it? If they're so relieved to have the repair done in the first place, they're just saying, "Oh, won't have me back." But if it's not good enough, we need to be back in there. I think that's probably going to add something.
As we're dealing with capital works,
yes,
our capital work, and you're quite right, certainly when it comes to capital works, people aren't always clear about the standard that we're looking for and what we think we're paying for. That's why there's always a post-inspection of all the work on a capital work at the end.
So the capital works rather than repair work. I think that's
repairs,
it. Not everything is repaired, right?
The repairs, we can only post-inspect a certain element. And we've had scrutiny on repairs at last.
Thank you very much. And I'm aware that you are picking up on repairs and following up on the work that we've already been doing on repairs. So thank you very much. Keith, I see your hand is up. Do you wish to say something about repairs?
Yes, very briefly.
In that case, I'm going to have to say we must save that for another time because we have a very full agenda and we need to make progress tonight.
Chair, it's about the reporting system of repairs.
Thank you very much. We can pick that up at a later time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
So we move to paper A6. Oh, in that case, yes. Actually, I'm going to propose that we move to the resident association piece now, because we have residents who may wish to speak on that. So in that case, we are at paper A7. Thank you. So this is the Council Support to Residents Associations, and this report outlines the support currently provided to resident associations operating in the council properties and private resident associations. It also includes details of future work programmes to support private resident associations Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Would it be possible to hear the residents first, do we think? Would you mind?
So
Yes, that'd be all right. I think it's.
I think we should start with the youngest one.
Yes.
Hello and welcome. Hi, my name is Rava. I live on Henry Dickens Estate and I'm speaking on behalf of the youth of our area. As someone who grew up in social housing my whole life and have been surrounded by friends and family living in social housing, I have only come to learn that the TMO and the RBKC, our designated landlords, have not carried out their roles and have disregarded those like me living under their tenancy. The council's main responsibilities to their tenants, as highlighted on your own website, is to keep our home wind and watertight and in good repair, and to keep all installations for heating, water, gas and electricity supply in working order. These are only 2 points highlighted, yet I can find thousands of homes where their living conditions are not acceptable and unfair. It is confusing to me as to why we pay outstanding amounts of money towards the council for them to not provide us with a house we see as comfortable and stable. We have seen the RBKC let us down time and time again, and the biggest letdown was the tragedy of Grenfell Tower. This only proves the consequence of neglect and what unlivable conditions can cause. Yet you carry on gambling with people's lives to make profit. The aftermath of Grenfell exposed to us, the youth, the detachment the RBKC have to our community, and especially when the majority come from an ethnic background. I live in Henry Dickens Estate, where the flats always have ongoing issues with leaks, damps, flooding, etc. Even now, my house has several leaks and mold. My mum's bedroom does not have a bed due to the RBKC hiring the unprofessional and unskilled Amber, who flooded my mum's room, ruining her furniture, and did not complete their job. When asking for compensation, we were denied many times, making your tenants feel as if they are begging for basic necessities of a stable house that you promised to provide. It seems that the RBKC make a lot of false promises, and there is an ongoing pattern of cost cutting and providing the cheapest services for us, forgetting that we too deserve a secure house. The RBKC have silenced the youth for too long. We are told that we are too young to understand, but I'm sorry to break it to you. It is you that doesn't understand. We, the youth, are the ones who are writing the emails for your support. We are the voices for our parents, yet all you do is silence and diminish us. We have hope this changes, but sadly, hope is not enough in the RBKC, and that is why we are here today, to speak out, and will continue to do this. We heard Elizabeth Campbell saying the RBKC have changed. Respectfully, changing the name of the TMO is not change. It seems this is just another false promise in an attempt to silence us. Your paper shows that you are helping to build the capacity of the RA to give them a voice. However, there is not one mention of us, the youth. You must all have seen what we done on the 7th year anniversary. The Space Youth all had speeches. We are not uneducated, and children as young as 10 identified your wrongdoings. When are you going to speak to us directly? To conclude my question to you, would you let RBKC be your landlord? Woo!
Oh, well done. Are they going to answer it? Thank you very much. Who else is there? Keith, go next, and then Sarah.
Keith Cunningham, ex-councillor living in the south of the borough. First of all, can I start by congratulating the last speaker? I thought it was absolutely outstanding and very, and very, very accurate as well. My issue is more tangential, it's a smaller issue. In the Residents Association report, there is no mention of area residents association or support or of whether the council or not would support them. This is important because In some circumstances, area residents associations may actually be more apposite. So an area association would obviously cover a larger area. It may well include both council and non-council housing. We briefly discussed this at what was called the World's End Project, subsequently the Two Walls Project meeting, and in separate meetings with Moira Ugoji and Callum Wilson. I think that where the area of focus is large, and certainly with what has now become known as the Two Walls Project, individual RAs may not be effective in holding the council to account in terms of its commitments, whereas an area residents association, albeit harder to set up and service, may be able to do this more effectively. Before speaking to you on this, I passed that note to Dan Hawthorne, your executive director, who disappointingly this evening on previous items said he didn't know, including one on success criteria. And I asked him what the borough policy on this was. Again, disappointingly, he said he didn't know if there was a borough policy on area RAs or not. Chair, with the greatest respect, I think your executive director should have known, and I would perhaps request your help in seeking policy guidance from officers as to whether there is a current policy of supporting residents in setting up area residents association, and if there isn't, to ask officers to do this.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Sonia and Emma.
Thank you. And Keith touched on something, which is a paper, I understand that's available on the website.
This
The
is the
open
additional
letter.
papers.
Yes, the open letter.
Yeah, we have got
This was emailed.
The
Thank you.
open-
I have received it and I have seen it.
So for those who haven't read it, back in March 2018, at the time that was extremely complex and so managed to get 50 key organizations across Kensington and Chelsea. And the open letter asked for an immediate engagement with all residents associations and appropriate residents advisory boards in Nottingdale, to include them in the planning of all services that affect their residents, to co-design an effective community engagement strategy with residents associations and appropriate residents group, to set up a formal mechanisms for our concerns to be raised, to build the capacity of Nottingdale residents associations and other Nottingdale residents advisory panel, and to encourage and support residents of Nottingdale to set up their own resident association. And it's good to hear from Keith, and I would support what he's suggested, because we've got a report on building the capacity of residents association. Then what? Where's the voice? Where's the mechanism in which they can actually be as your equal partner? This hasn't happened. That document went to scrutiny. It is well known within RBKC, and I don't see any reference or anything in that report that says A, if it was rejected and the reason why, or B, any progress on that. So I'd like an answer on that. And very briefly, looking at the paper, I just wanted to point to a point of correction at 6.6.1. I don't remember the page. Which is page 61. It says, it reads, unlike council housing residents associations, they do not have a legal status. So just as a point of correction, I'd like to say that the current residents associations are unincorporated residents group. Yes, they do have a constitution. They are not a legal entity. So I think that's really important to have this clarified. And I'm curious to, so there should be no distinction between residents associations and a residents group who have members of the constitution and have the appropriate AGMs. I'm interested to find out details of the full package at 6.9 6.9 on page 62, which suggests that Kensington and Chelsea Social Council is commissioned by RBKC to provide support to private residence associations. It's the first time I hear, and you all know that I hear everything. So I think I would have known. I think I'd like to know what the package entails, how much that package is worth, and did you go through a tender? What's the process of appointing a particular organization? I mean, one of your partners to do so, and what's the rationale between the distinction with a residence association and council housing? Is it the same level of support? Because it seems to suggest that the support from KCNC is to ensure that residence association run effectively. And the last comment, which is on the training at 5.8, which is great. Tonight, Bromley House held their AGM, and I was re-elected. Surprise, surprise. So as a chair of a residence association, I'm looking at this wonderful training package, safeguarding, I'm a designated safeguarding communications. I don't think I have a problem with that. Making residence association effective and how to chair, I don't think I have a problem with that. I've chaired international meetings with representative of states, so I'll pass. Hosting effective meetings, funding, I think people know that I know how to submit the funding application. So my question to you is scrutiny, obviously. My question to you, training package, what does it do for me? How do you build my capacity as the properly elected chair of Bromley House and the Residents Association? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have.
Sorry. Very quickly, I'm so sorry. I've just looked really, that's really important. And the data is interesting about NCL and CLLR. And I know that some people got CLL funding for legal fees, for a hot tub and different stuff. I'm quite disappointed that it's not enough successful application from residents association in social housing when we know there's high area of priorities in terms of security gates and stuff like this. So I would recommend that there's a discussion around the criteria, because I know if I applied as a voluntary sector organization to CLLR, I wouldn't get a hot tub, I wouldn't get core funding, and I wouldn't get legal costs. So I think we need to be clear, and I think there must be a system by which you recognize priorities for residents association and council housing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Glen Code.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for waiting.
I want to bring up something which has been a frustration for many years, and that is the very much out of date list of residents associations on the website and the implications of that. And I've been talking about this for, I can't remember how many years, but particularly the last 3 years, when a particular issue came up in Colville Ward by chance, and it turned out that one of the organisations that was being consulted about some work in the area no longer exists. It hasn't had meetings, doesn't have a website, doesn't have a functioning email, no longer exists. And somebody else was on the list. We talked to, as they say, we talked to all these groups, and now we're doing this, which is kind of dodgy way of doing. Another one, which is still on the website, one of the RAs in Colville has a chair who has been deceased for 7 years. And I have notified the relevant officers about 5 times now, and I do find this hugely frustrating, as do people in Colville and elsewhere. So we're here, this all seems rather hopeful. This is what we're doing, because I don't have any experience of improving how officers work with private residence associations, for example, because I can't see any work happening at all with private residence associations. And the issue about the resident association information being kept up to date, it is so out of date, it's a complete and utter embarrassment, and people still use that list. And I have asked numerous times, and they keep on putting it off and putting it off. It is a lot of work, but it's really important because these groups are being used to consult on things, including on planning issues. And there's one that we have particularly in our ward, where we have a neighbourhood forum, which is highly organised, run by people who know exactly what they're doing. They have the time and the knowledge to run it beautifully. And then there's resident associations that are being completely ignored, that are or aren't considered consultees, and one of which they tell me has sent to, when they set up their RA, they registered it on the website, didn't hear anything. They sent an email, didn't hear anything, and then they sent by registered mail a copy of the constitution and asked for it to be registered, and it still hasn't been. And they've asked to be doing all over again because all that information has gone missing, and they are frankly fed up, and I'm being polite, because they've been waiting, I think, 2 years now to be acknowledged, and there's a lot of things going on that they want to have a word about. So there's, I do think, I understood that, there's probably lack of staff. I've no idea what's going on here, but it all seems very reactive and not proactive. And if we're to have any kind of improvement in engagement with REs, with the council, but especially with the private ones all over the area, this really has to be addressed. It is outrageous. There are also, I often hear about arguments happening within the council ones, and that happens, I'm sorry to say. People are still treated as the awkward squad. Resident associations who ask awkward questions and keep on pestering, as is their job, are still treated like the awkward squad, and we really shouldn't be putting up with that anymore. So that's yeah. So there's, as I said, in one case, there's a resident association that did exist that was completely ignored, and one which no longer existed, that was registered as a consultee, whereas the chair had passed away 7 years ago. And while I'm on a roll, I have so many problems with NSIL and how it's implemented, and how bids are requested for that, and who does and doesn't get them. There are people who know the rules and people who don't. I can't remember when we last agreed one in my ward, because people apply for things which are completely irrelevant and should be city living, local life. So, I would very much welcome, I should understand how NSIL works, and I have tried, and I don't. And if I don't understand it, my residents won't be fine for it. I'll leave that with you.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to say,
there's one more question.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I'm keeping track.
Thank you. Yes, I was a bit distracted by that wonderful young woman that came and asked the question that many residents ask over and over again. So my big spanner in the works is residents associations have had, some of them really work hard for their residents and on behalf of their residents. However, the way that residents association interact and have interacted with RBKC has been one of disempowerment, in the same way that residents are disempowered at every level. And when you look, I do a lot of work across different departments within the council, NHS, all kinds of stuff. And RBKC's paradigm is headless chickens, not knowing where they're going, ever. No accountability, nothing. Residents Association are really pretty powerless in a lot of the work that they do, even though they are working really hard and they have residents backing, but often they're not listened to at all. In terms of like the package, I'm really concerned about the same question. I'm not interested as a resident to be part of a resident association, but I am an interested resident. I am a very proactive resident. I would like to be able to have access to know what are the structures of the council, how do they interact with each other, how are they accountable, what are they meant to be telling me all the time, why are officers not answering the questions, and when they give laissez-faire answers, I, as an independent residents should be able to call them out and ask for accountability, because they don't. And I feel that very often being part of an RA is often it's better to be an independent and nothing to do with any group whatsoever, because then nothing's holding you back. Having said that, it's really important that, again, language is really clear about what an RA is, level of power, of sitting around the table when they're holding councillors, contractors, systems, governance to account. And actually, what is the level playing field? How are the council, and this goes back to Grenfell, this goes back to everything. How are the council creating a level playing field, not just for residents associations, but for ordinary residents who are genuinely interested in RBKC being the best place to live in?
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who has contributed, including those in the room. I think that was actually a really useful session with a lot of really helpful input. And we started with hearing concerns about repairs, management and treatment of residents, particularly in the North Borough and particularly regarding minorities. And we also heard about youth.
Yes, they're just saying particularly the youth in social housing.
I was going to be saying that. Thank you, Samia. We've also heard about area RAs, which is another really important factor, I think, and I can certainly inquire from the relevant officer what the borough policy is, if indeed it exists.
And hopefully to establish one, Chair, if there isn't one.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just say, I did put that to the.
Can I ask you, Aziza, please to speak through the chair?
Oh, right, sorry.
That is, we do have to work through the agenda.
Right,
And we do have to try to, but I'm sure you can have a really useful conversation
fine
later.
No worries.
We've heard about actually another factor which I think is really important for the council and particularly any lead members that are here to take on board, about what actually is the mechanism for hearing the voice of residents as a partner. And we've heard about level playing fields as well. We've also heard about the core package, the Kensington and Chelsea Social Council, and that's something that perhaps I think maybe the committee would like to ask more about, but we'll come to that. And the training package, which is currently around the TCC, I myself have also raised the idea, which I think Mees also just mentioned, that some of that training would be really valuable beyond the residents, beyond the TCC, but also in terms of identifying what training would be useful. Perhaps that's something that we can also have a little look at in terms of other residents putting other suggestions forward. We've also heard about, which I'm sure we'll hear more about in a minute, the up-to-dateness of the records. Councillor Denko mentioned that it's reactive, not proactive, but from what she says, I wonder if it's reactive when we have notifications of defunct organisations and notifications of new organisations that somehow aren't getting through the system. So that's something else I think we need to look at. And I think that covers all the points that the members have raised, and thank you very much for coming and bringing that to us. And now I'd like to invite the officers to come and speak to the public health. Yes. I'm not forgetting the lead member, of course. She would like to join.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to everyone who's come today and has spoken particularly about this particular paper. As Claire introduced earlier, this paper is about support that is provided to tenants of residents association, and there is a distinction between council housing residents associations and private residents associations. And we set out the support package, and also the resources that are available to support council housing residents associations compared to the private residents associations. And obviously we're aware of the key issues around, particularly around the support to private residents associations, because there's quite a difference in the amount of support to private residents associations. So this also provides some information about future support. But I just want to, because there's so much that's being raised, I don't want to talk any more about this introductory session, this part. I don't know if Doug or Yaga, you have anything else you want to say?
Just bear in mind, this is about residents associations as opposed to not our overall resident engagement strategy, obviously. So they're very different.
Is there anything you want to add?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Can I just say thank you for coming and speaking so eloquently. And I hope you will all think about putting yourself forward for the Youth Council, because we need young people that really feel passionately about things. And you obviously do that. So please think about that, and we can put you in touch with two of them if you are interested.
They could be good to build their capacity. Just saying. That's
But think about
that's
it,
the
and please let me
youth
know, and
residents
we'll-
group from working housing. So I think that is good to build their capacity. They're really good.
Questions?
Was anyone going to say anything else?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I think we're really fortunate in this borough that we have some really strong residents associations. I know Lloyd is involved in some of them, and they do hold the council to account. I mean, you talk about area ones, we have the Chelsea Society, which is open to everybody that lives or works in Chelsea. We have the Kensington Society, which I accept probably doesn't appeal to everybody in Kensington. But they are two really good societies, and they really do give us a difficult time when they need to. But they also help us on something. So just to say thank you to them.
I'm going to start with Councillor Rossi.
Yeah, I just want to follow on from Sarah there. I mean, we are very fortunate. We have fantastic residents associations, and I think I'm going to pass over to Lloyd, but I think sometimes we don't do enough to recognise them, because I think they really do help us in planning, in licensing, in policy formulation, and a lot of they do work, you know, for no money, because they want to do it, because they're committed to their area. And yeah, I think we should actually try and think of a way that we could include them more, or sort of reward them more. That's all.
Councillor Wade.
It's kind of an observation. Reading through this, I was surprised by some of the information that was apparently available to private residents associations. You're dealing with council residents associations, but actually you've got a lot of individual residents associations which we should be bringing forward in our RSL stock, where you'd actually develop a good voice, give them, and it's also about communicating. So we had a conversation about all the consultations that come up in an area. Actually, why aren't you telling residents associations about the consultations? Because then you would probably get a fuller or wider representation rather than just the usual suspects. We did have the gold standard residents association, which ensured that everybody had a constitution, in which case actually their voice should be considered, because they've got a structure, they've got a constitution, they have an AGM, they have regular meetings, they also have to deliver their accounts. So I'm particularly concerned, for example, about some of the initiatives which I think we could work with, for example, Notting Hill Genesis, Peabody, Women's Pioneer, and the major housing associations, in order that they can have the facility to be
able to create a residents association, because if you're an RBKC tenant, I can assure you sometimes your property is better standard than Peabody or Women's Pioneer. So you've got to have people's voices, but unless people are told they can have a voice, if they're educated to have a voice, I think it would be better for the whole borough. But I was intrigued by Kensington and Chelsea Social Council apparently providing training. I haven't heard of that ever. So perhaps what we should be considering is, say, a website, on the website, one just for residents associations, where people can upload the changes on their committees or their chairs or their contact details. But it's also a method that you could be saying, hey, you know, you're an SW7, a whole load of our kind of residents associations. Are you aware of this consultation? It's a two-way thing.
Just to add, I think I will write out to all councillors again, asking them to go through the RAs in their wards and to let me know, you know, if anybody has changed, because sometimes it's personal email addresses and, as you said, somebody dies and it just disappears, or people move on and they don't tell us. So, and more councillors do have a habit of not responding. I hate to say, not everybody. All right, there are a number who just ignore the emails.
All right, Councillor, I've gone through the list on a number of occasions, informed the department. It's still wrong.
Could you email me, please?
All right, fine,
I'll
I
make
will.
sure it
But the
happens.
other thing, which was Councillor Dacre mentioned, is the total frustration on Ensel and the City Living Local Life. What on earth happens in that department?
Well, Ensel is in planning.
No. I'm just saying, you know, we're talking about residents associations. They're not going to know whether it's planning or wherever it is. They just know it's a fund that they can apply to. But it's an absolute pain.
The City Living Local Life on the website, it's very clear what they can apply for.
Yes, but it's about a question of linking it. But when if somebody doesn't know it's called City Living Local Life and they're looking for funding, I'm just saying that on a page which says, are you aware of X, Y, and Z? It could be consultation, it could be Ensel, it could be City Living Local Life, because they're not going to know the terminology. So I think you've raised a very good point about what's on the website. And as we said about the future programme to support resident associations, we are refreshing all the information on the website because we're aware that what we currently have could be so much better, that it's very limited. So there's going to be information about good practice, there's going to be information about, you know, model constitutions, but also, as you mentioned, funding as well, where you can get funding. So we're going to completely refresh all the information that we have, and there will be a page for residents associations, and that will also have a link to City Living Local Life and link to Ensel and Section 106. And perhaps yes, 106 would be great. Yeah. But I mean, I think that the training, for example, provided for committees, there should be a link on that, so they're aware of the of training. Could I just respond to another question that you've asked? Somebody else asked about Kensington and Chelsea Social Council. I think I need to clarify what their role is. We're not saying, just to clarify, what we're saying in the report isn't that we fund them to support resident associations. What we're saying is that we provide core funding to enable them to operate. One of their functions is to support residents associations. So we are supporting them, not in that package, but generally we're providing support. But we're also mentioning where support can actually be accessed. I mean, GDPR would be a great thing to introduce, because as somebody said, that many of the people on the committees are very well intentioned, but don't know some of the problems associated with voting data. It's just I volunteered to pick up with training.
Yes, well, just to sort of to elaborate on the training point, I think Simia's gone now, but I was pointing out that perhaps the chair of Bromley House, Simia, is quite an exceptional lady, so she has a range of skills that many residents wouldn't. So when she went through that list and said, well, she's competent in this, I think we probably recognise that there's some that do need training, two people who do need training around how to chair a meeting. I think the training mentioned on funding speaks very much to the point that Councillor Wade has just made there. So it is an absolute acronym suite, isn't it, of various funding pots. So that specific training is exactly there to address that point. I would also like the point that Mimi well made as well. The training here is absolutely not solely for residents associations. That is open for everybody. So if you go into one of our centres, Blantyre or Moulton Road, there's a leaflet there which lists all the training that's available for everybody. This is not even an exhaustive list. There's also training that Jackie and I have delivered on how the council works, how its structures works, who your councillors are, how the ward system works as well there.
Can I just, before you
Sorry.
leave Doug, sorry, can I just respond to that point, Tiago?
Yes, please do.
You mentioned Blantyre and Moulton Road.
Yes.
With information about the training.
Yes, yeah.
And it's not open just to only TCC.
Yeah.
Should it not be, or perhaps as a committee, we may like to suggest it be the case, that such training be offered regardless of tenure and regardless of landlord, because I think we're talking about RBKC properties there. Am I correct?
We are. So the
Moulton Road,
training we
housing
do.
management.
The only thing I would, sorry, don't cut.
It is funded out of the housing management.
Yeah.
So yes, and what I would also just say, it can be wider than that. It's in housing matters and on our website.
Excellent,
Yeah.
thank you. And perhaps something that Maura could take away would be to consider how we can expand the offer of that training and also its visibility. Yes, I think it's not only for housing matters, although it's obviously great that it's happening.
Absolutely, and that is the final paragraph in the report, that we will look to see how we can expand, but also in terms of what private residents associations might need. I think it's worth us refreshing our database, contacting them and asking them actually what kind of training they might need and seeing how we can link that into what already exists and whether we need to consider additional alternative training that might support their particular requests.
Thank you. Can I ask specifically on page 58? The North of the Borough only has 76 resident associations in comparison to the middle of the borough of 120 and the south 100. How can we increase that number and how can we help them increase that number? And I also got a question for you, Doug, which is in 5.3, we talk about where no resident association exists, the team works with private residents. How can we help people establish resident associations? I know even in my ward, I've got streets that I love to work and form some resident associations. Sometimes it's around a theme, but if I don't have a theme, how can I just get everybody together? And I think I completely agree with the database points that's already been made. But my one big suggestion tonight is that actually you use that database and you invite all the resident associations in the borough to a networking event. And we actually ask them, both the private and the residential, because I think there's a lot to be offered from existing RAs, but just to actually share their GDP experience, or actually bring them in on a tagline of come and we'll have about half an hour on GDP. Because actually that way you can hear from the resident associations. We heard from some people tonight, and it's been valuable, but actually there's a lot. But I would love to see more RAs in the North of the Borough, and I think we need to actually think about whether actually we do give money to KCSC specifically to actually go and help people for root and branch, and whether actually that's something that even the council could have training on.
I would say the North of the Borough it reflects the fact that most of our social housing is in the North of the Borough, and there is less private housing, and that's why there are quite significantly fewer private housing resident associations in the North of the Borough. As you can see, in terms of council housing, resident associations, social housing, residents associations, most of them are in the North of the Borough, and they represent thousands of residents, and that's why there's that different balance in terms of council and private. I think the takeaway is how we encourage more resident associations. I think ward councillors have a very key role in that, in engaging with their local residents and encouraging them to come together, which is something that you're doing. Should they come together, obviously, we would encourage them and work with them and encourage them to, in the first instance, work with KCSC because they have that function already. But I think the idea of having a networking event, that's something we can take away and consider.
I mean, I would happily offer some of our small money towards helping to fund that, because I just think, you know, my ward, I don't have that many residents. When I look at the database, I've actually gone, who isn't on this database? And there were lots of people that I then contacted. Some didn't come forward, but I'm looking at that going, there's a network out there. If I can tap into it. And I think it would be really helpful, perhaps, to even look at whether you can expand and use of NCIL to help form some of these, to help provide some of that training, and maybe a new category.
If I can perhaps answer your question, Councillor Gardner, I think also there's something we need to do is about bringing the joy back into civic life a bit, and make it, you know, so that it's not a chore for people. That's what's often sort of, you know, been the death of many associations. It's simply been hard work. So it's often as simply as inviting them to a party. We've had great success in Talk Court by that, you know, that lightness alongside it. There's the serious side of investment is your state, helping them improve relationship. But I say there is something very key about just bringing the joy back into civic life, which I think we are often in danger of forgetting.
Councillor North.
You couldn't have picked a subject closer to my heart. 2.5 years ago, when I was elected in our ward, we were told by some of our public housing that we weren't listening. So myself and Councillor Hudd made that our #1 priority. And we started off with a lot of neighbours unhappy, and we've heard some examples here today. So it's a passion that we've driven. And yes, it's come to a party where a block that had a garden invited their neighbours that didn't have a garden. Johnson House, which is Octavia Housing, had a list of problems that just weren't dealt with. And actually, just getting together. And I have to say, ward councils play the biggest part. If you know in your ward that you've got a weak resident association, one that's fizzled out, then tell your department. Ask those for help. I have to say, the officers have gone the extra mile, certainly with me. One of how to produce a newsletter, this is the one that ESSA produces, and the Old School Society as well, are very good at actually. I think it depends on the effort that's put in. And yes, you will get the help from the council. I have to say, I agree that the lists are out of date, and I get that it's going to cost an officer or half an officer to actually deal with the admin side of it. And that money's going to come from somewhere in strapped budgets. I get that. But last year, I moved a motion in the council, supported by a lot of people, but I find it ironic that a councillor comes here today that whips her party to vote against my motion to improve the recognition and acceptance of resident associations. So I think we should do more. The gold standard was a good example. Okay, it could be replicated with less money, but the mayor used to hold an event, give out certificates every year, and sort of recognise and reward those. And each RA had a table where they could say, this is what we did at a party, this is how we did our meetings, this is the guidance notes. And I think it was a great opportunity, and I would definitely propose that we do that again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor North. And can I just remind the meeting that it's very important that scrutiny is not a political function.
Thank you, Chair.
So, carrying on, would anybody else like to ask a question? Councillor Ray.
One example would be, there was an event, I think last year, which was trying to help people with gardening, all right? Very successful event. But in wards, for example, like Earl's Court, where we have a high level of RSL, who do have gardens, who would have liked that advice, that it's not necessarily the money, it's actually the advice. And that would have been a way of trying to support that particular RA in that block. And I just think that was a missed opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. I have a couple of points I wish to get to myself, following on from what Councillor Gardner has said about the numbers on page 58. the north of the borough, which has, we hear, the most social housing, has only 10 resident associations for council housing, which is not really that many. And I know that there may be larger ones in more households. But I'm just wondering, what is it telling us? What is that picture there telling us about the empowerment of residents in the north of the borough, relative to some of the strong resident associations that we've heard about, and we've heard how officers go the extra mile, and how important those resident associations can be. I just wonder if we have sort of parity of support and parity of visibility in the north as we do in the south, bearing in mind some of the comments that have been made at the beginning of the meeting around disparities and feelings of discrimination. And I wondered if is there something in this that perhaps could be looked at?
In terms of the social housing associations, Madam Chair, well, I think largely it is geography. We have the large estates such as Silchester, Kensal are grouped together up there, Trellick. So I think if one was to do a breakdown in terms of numbers of social housing tenants and the associations, overlaid a map, then perhaps if that disparity wouldn't be there. I think it's largely to do with that. In terms of, in my team, I have 2 resident involvement officers. So one looks after the north and one looks after the south. So there's parity in that sense. And we literally divide ourselves. I was up in the north today, and I was in the south yesterday. So I can assure you from my team that's.
And we supplemented with a smaller estate with compacts. Now I know that that's not ideal because it doesn't give full representation, but we do have most of the estates that we have. We've got resident associations on. Where there isn't one, actually, Yargo's team are out there writing to people to try and create one. And we have one large estate, particularly in the north, where we've got a hiatus now with no RA.
I was going to ask about that.
And we do really need to, and we really do need to get that, try and get that moving forward, because that's important to us. So where you've got 300 or 400 options, we really do need to be able to try and get that.
Thank you. I have one more, which is to Councillor Addenbrooke. Where we have strong RAs that can really hold the council to account, what does that mean in practice? And we've heard about from residents the appetite in doing just that. So how can we transfer that expertise, if you like, to other resident associations who feel that they are not able to hold the council to account?
So I think certainly with the Kensington Society and the Chelsea Society, they are very interested in planning. And anything to do with the road networks. Obviously, everybody's interested in electric bikes, but they look at the public realm. I think that's where they're really, really strong. And sometimes they're really helpful for us on planning. When our residents don't like a certain application, they will write and object, and they will come and speak. And so they really do represent the residents, I feel.
Thank you. So I think it's probably fair to say in that case that we may be at a juncture now as council where we have the opportunity to build ways for residents to hold the council to account around other things beyond planning, which may be something as fundamental as housing and how it engages with residents. So perhaps we can have a conversation at some point about how we go about supporting it. And I just had one more quick question, which was, how can resident associations request support and access the support that is available?
So I would hope that they would go to their local councillors, who they should know, or hopefully, everybody knows their local RAs, and get some advice, and then come to the officers, and then they can point you in the right direction.
I mean, I guess it's a point I've been making in the council for quite a long time. Given that people aren't psychic, how do they know what's out there? If they don't know that it's out there, they're not going to come to their ward councillor and ask if they don't think there's anything there. So I think it maybe goes to the point I was saying about Malton Road and Blantyre. think that actually maybe we need to go a bit beyond in terms of making that proper, visible and available.
We could do it.
Whether it's the KCSCs where we sign.
I think we can do some lo-fi things, a poster in community spaces, not necessarily council offices, in community spaces, a poster just saying you want information, you want support, come to, or go to the website, and then we have a website that is fit for purpose about resident associations, provides all that information. So that's something that we can definitely do. But obviously we have to make sure that the website has the information, is up to date and refreshed, and that database is also refreshed before we do that. But definitely we can, it's something that we were happy to take forward and communicate more widely.
Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to say, Councillor Gardner, you were suggesting about a networking event. I would propose that perhaps we could make that as a recommendation, something to be brought forward.
Could I
Yes,
ask
please
the
do.
Chair, could I ask for councillors' help? Because the database is currently out of date, we will be asking for councillors' help to provide the most up-to-date information so we can be able to communicate effectively with our.
In order to make that a success, absolutely. But I think also sort of slightly tangential, following on from that, I think maybe we need to consider how are we going to have a mechanism where when people, councillors, residents, whoever might be proactive and bring information, how is that information then filtered through so that it gets onto the database, so that people don't have to report it more than once? And maybe that's something that we have a look at. Councillor Raven.
The only question I would have was the differentiation between RA with the constitution and and a resident group, and how that is differentiated, because you might have one building which forms a residents association, which may be 5 flats, but actually you might have a residents association with over 120 residents members, so which has a constitution. So I think that might be something that's worth defining as you're refreshing.
And that being said, of course, we would hope that in the Royal Borough of Kensington, Chelsea, every citizen is equal, so that every voice will be heard.
Feed in that if it's a group, does it have a constitution? Do they need to have help to set up a constitution?
Yes, thank you.
Just to follow on, exactly right. And we've already said that in some blocks we have compact where they're not quite there. It's just one or two of them trying to do something together. And that's where your specific help, the officers, but again, it has to be the councillors kind of act as an in-between to encourage that to happen. So, for example, you can get a model constitution, you can give them some examples, designing a newsletter, things like that. But can I just say, I agree with the annual event, and can I propose, and I think the best way to do it is that the Mayor of the Royal Borough of Kensington has an annual event hosting resident associations and give them the opportunity to showcase what they do well. And it will be the ones like the Kensington Society, Earls Court Society, that can have a stall there and help and support, but buddy up with a neighbouring RA to do that. Often mansion blocks do that as well, and it works quite well. I think that we've got enough talent with well-run RAs.
But you've got, sorry, Chair, but I mean, I think there are two things. One, we have committees that volunteer their time.
Yes.
They're expected by definition to, when we do get stuff from the council, for us to disseminate to our membership. But actually, they do a lot of work. I mean, I'm just thinking about the oncoming Earls Court Exhibition Centre site planning application, which, you know, the Earls Court Society is going to have to try and respond to. But you don't get very much help. So there's, you know what I mean, the balance of what is people rely on RAs to do. It's not just having a fun time.
Councillor Harlan's suggestion with City Life Local Living funding could help, because I know we've used that to help RAs get a printer and some stock so they can print these letters.
And
So,
talk about experience.
Yeah.
Experience.
Yes, thank you. I see
Sorry, can I-
come back.
Can I take this away about holding an annual event?
Yes.
Because obviously we need to think
I think
about
we need to think about the details.
the
Absolutely.
details, where the funding will come from, because obviously it's,
Yeah, absolutely, but I think it's agreed as a recommendation. Now, I do see two. How's it going?
I think as a recommendation, I would suggest we kick off with a networking event.
Yes.
But actually, but hopefully that will develop, and actually in a year's time, we want to move it up to an annual event as a formal recommendation. Yeah, because the committee hasn't chosen, because council hasn't worked, but I think probably event one is networking and.
Yes, absolutely, agreed.
yes,
We do have two residents with their hands up now. I'm aware we are being very pushed for time, so I'm going to say to you both, if you can say it there where you are, and if you can say it in 2 sentences, then I'm happy, but I may have to cut you off. And please be aware.
Okay. Really quickly, I think there's a distinction between a residents association and a residents group, and I think we're talking about different groups. I'm gonna ask you that to consider putting this under housing directorate, because under general housing, we're talking about residents associations which are a different type of tenure rather than separating with communities. And in response to the councillor, I'm happy for free to just set up a toolkit. It's really easy to set up a residents association with a draft constitution. It's a bit of an amendment from yours. So please, let's not form more voluntary sector organization and use that funding in a different ways. And I would suggest that in terms of networking, you set up a regular peer support network of RA leads, because some of us have experience, some others have achieved certain things. And I think if that platform is available, we can use existing resources rather than spending money in the voluntary sector to end up in the situation that we're in tonight.
Thank you very much. I think that's particularly an interesting suggestion about the peer support network. Maybe want to consider them as well. Thank you.
Just to echo what you've said, and I go back to what hasn't been mentioned is the fact that there is no trust. That resident associations are often running on empty, and there is very little support out there. So actually, what is the level playing field? And I think that means who's decided the package of training that residents associations and tenants are going to have. Why is it that that's been chosen, and why haven't we been asked to come up with what we need and would like that's useful on the ground? Because I think theory is great, but you need to do some reflective practice, and it seems to me that there's very little of that going on.
Can I just respond? I was interested earlier, you said that you'd like to be an interested resident, but you weren't keen to join a resident association.
Yeah.
The TCC is the venue that those trainings have come through from in terms of consultation feedback. Perhaps you could look at how you could link into that in order that your voice comes through.
Yeah, the TCC is it's only allowed to be attended by residents association officers, and where I live, I don't get the privilege to attend it as an ordinary resident. I can only attend it as an officer. And it seems to me, and certainly my resident association is burnt out. On World's End, the resident association is burnt out because they have no teeth. Resident associations really don't have any teeth. The Chelsea Society and all of them are quite wealthy, looking after their own. We're not about that. And this is what is so frustrating, that people just keep missing the point. It's almost like they just miss it. It's there, but they just miss it. And again, it boils down to how traditionally, and you carry on doing exactly the same thing. You know, the definition of madness is what RBKC keeps doing. The lack of real meaningful involvement. You haven't got clarity around what involvement is. You haven't got clarity about how to engage residents. You really don't listen to us at all. And you keep doing this thing where you come and say, okay, can you tell us what we want to hear? And then you lead us to tell you what you want to hear. And then you go away and you decide what you've heard. And then you come back and tell us what you decided we told you. And in the process of that, we just fall through the cracks. And you guys are just doing exactly the same thing over and over again. It is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed on your behalf because you're not listening. You're certainly not listening to residents who actually know what they're talking about. You're not willing to be criticized. You're not willing to do reflective practice. You're not willing to hear. You're not willing to learn. And it's just the same Grenfell situation over and over and over again. And the unwillingness, keep telling us about, if you want to be a resident association, go to your councillor. I can't even talk about my councillor because I don't know where he is most of the time, or any of the 3 councillors. And when they come, they don't even know what's going on with the local residents. So, guys, it's time for you to really, really listen and take heed. And, you know, no point in asking questions because you guys don't answer them. No point in giving suggestions because you don't listen to them. Keith said to me today that I'm in a very negative mood today, and that's probably because I've had 2 meetings that are to do with RBKC that I've been dreading since Monday. Why? Because of the same old things that we've been going over here tonight. The issues around contracting and the fact that no one's being held accountable. And then the thing about, you know, oh, we can't guarantee that a contract can be monitored. What do you mean? You know, no, the officers are not accountable. The directors are not accountable. Who's accountable? Who's going to do something actually?
I'm going to step in and say thank you very much for, actually, that was a really important contribution. And I know that you are not by any means the only person who feels that. And I hope that this is something that the lead members can take away, considering when we are talking about, as we are so often talking about change at the council, this is where we are at now in 2024. So thank you for that contribution, and I share everybody's hope that we will be able to see change going forward.
And actually, if we could go back to the first paper, that's why it's so important that you go to the engagement sessions, because you're the people with the lived experience. And this response to the inquiry report has got to have your voices in it. So please, I know, you know, there's a lack of trust, but please, we really do need your voices.
Yeah. But I think also, given that everybody has come to the meeting this evening, I think it's really important that we accurately capture what they have said. And the committee itself, and also the officers and lead members, can, as Mimi has said, reflect on what's been said and look at what actions we're going to put in place in response. So that being said,
sorry, can I just say something? 30 seconds.
And it's just one
just
sentence.
30 seconds. I just wanted to say to that lady that I think it's very important that you do share what you just said, funding for association, because it was only last year, and we're now in 7 years, that I found out that resident association can have money towards a printer. I myself been using my printer, her printer. We didn't know there was such funding. So I think it's really important that you do tap into the association and let them know what kind of funding there is, if there's any training for the association's funding, anything to do with the association. Yeah. The lady over there, I've been saying it for 7 years now. It's very important that all associations, because I get along with all the other association members, and we do seem to network when we come to places like this. But I've always said it for 7 years that it's really important. We have an annual general resident association where we can all network together as association and share information, share things together. So I have been mentioning that to the council for about 7 years, but unfortunately, as of yet, nothing's been done. Yeah,
Thank you, Susan. And on the subject of local walk in particular, I wonder if we need to make sure within the housing and communities that Grenfell Walk Resident Association is fully supported to whatever it needs. Yeah, thank you. So we will move on then to, in fact, we're moving backwards now to page A6, which is the HRA. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for coming.
I'm still going. Oh, right. It's been finished.
So this report is provided to provide an overview of the council's housing revenue account 25-26 budget setting and business account. I'm guessing we do not have public contributions on this paper, so I will ask the assistant review member to introduce the paper.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief in the hour. We're bringing this to your committee earlier this year because last year we were rightly told off it was too late. So it is as you will have seen, still in its draft format, but this is why we want to have your feedback on it. So we hope we've reported to you with enough time for the feedback. We've also been able to bring it to you earlier this year because the government, unlike last year, has already confirmed the rent increases for next year, which is CPI +1. This means that rents will be increased next year by 3.2%.
We don't know that for sure.
Oh, okay. We're assuming.
If it was based on today's inflation, it would be 3.2% would be the recommendation. The figure will come out in the middle of October, but we're not expecting inflation to change significantly between now.
And one of the big differences between this year and last year, because remember we had a huge inflation situation last year, and we're now seeing that actually it's all coming down. But having said that, was your finances remain tight, as alluded earlier to our huge major works project. So we are still borrowing for that, and we're still investing for that in our housing stock. 600 million over 6 years. And would love your feedback, please, obviously on our tenancy support fund. We also support residents in many other ways. We do it through our social value elements in our contracts. We also do council tax rebate program, and then we also have housing employability teams, and then also likewise there's a big employment team that employs local residents. So there's lots of other things which I would actually like to pull together for you and bring back as well at another time about what we're doing rather than just the tenancy support fund, because I do think we do lots of different parts of our housing team, and it would be good to actually have that together. So I'll leave it now with Doug or Neil.
We have Neil Isaac who's got some finance, but the only other thing I would add is our intent. We did try and consult with residents over the summer. It was the summer, and it probably wasn't what they wanted to do on a very sunny evening. Is to talk about the HRA business plan, and I think there's some learning points for us about how we advertise what it is that we want to talk to people about. But we do have a resident summit planned for the 9th of November. Last year we had over 200 residents come, and we definitely want to make this a central part of that. Because ultimately there are choices, aren't there? It's about, if you save revenue, you can spend more on capital, but you've got to be able to deliver your day-to-day service. And in a way, some of it's quite chicken and egg, because to save revenue, we've got to do the capital to stop the repair. So that's the sort of debate we would quite like to have with residents on the 9th of November.
That's this year's.
That's this year's.
It's last year's.
No.
This year. Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any controversies, Councillor?
Yes, I will be quick too. So firstly, thank you very much for bringing this to us early. The second one, that's probably me not being a bit stupid, but with capital expenditure, some is coming from the HRA, but it's not all coming from the HRA. So what kind of percentage of the capital spend actually comes from the HRA?
So last year we had a table which set it out. So there are some
Approximately.
Oh, well, most of it really comes from the HRA.
Okay, so most of it, okay, that's cool.
Because there are a limited amount of capital receipts from the general. Other than that, it's the HRA.
Virtually all HRA. So the only other exception to that would be where there's grant funding available. So particularly with like Western State, we've had quite a lot of government grant and we're able to supplement. But that still becomes HRA capital.
Okay, all right. So
Is this pertaining to the table on page 44, table 3?
that just shows you the breakdown within, I think.
Oh, that's just about what's going to be spent as opposed to.
Does it not talk about the revenue contribution to the capital programmes?
No, but I'm just saying is that it, or is money coming, being answered that most of it is coming from the HRA?
So some of those capital receipts are generally HRA capital receipts, aren't they?
Okay, so my second question is about the tenant support fund. Just to say, we know that there are certain pensioners who will not be getting the winter fuel allowance. So just obviously you're aware of it. But I think, are we encouraging people to take up pension credit? Because I think sometimes people don't know about it, and sometimes people might think there's a stigma. But it's pension credit is the least claimed benefit. So and some people will come into difficulties. So.
Thank you, Councillor Rossi. I'll leave Doug to answer specifically about pension credits, but that's one of the options which I've got to mention in my introduction, is that we'd like your feedback on if it's possible for us to do some of our tenancy support fund to catch some of the pensioners who are going to miss out on the winter fuel payments because of the new government's cap. We will see if that's something that we can do, and we'll bring back to you. If that's something you're wanting to do, I think something we're very, very keen to do, because we feel we don't know the exact numbers yet. We've asked for some numbers just this week about who of our council tenants will not get that extra winter fuel benefit. But in terms of the pension credit, I'm sure.
So we have a tenancy sustainment team with Jim Kirkham, who came to our tenancy consultative committee, where actually you're quite right, pension credits is something he's been campaigning on, and we've assisted quite a few people to get them. I haven't got the exact figures in front of me, but it is something that we're really keen to make happen, because we do realise that. And his job is to make sure that happens.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Councillor Wade.
How do you identify somebody? It's just in general, because I think that we limit ourselves in some ways about how we promote things. Putting something in a library, putting something in a common part doesn't necessarily get to the people that actually we should be getting to. I just wondered how you're going to identify people who could benefit.
So that is a very valid point. We do obviously have a relationship in terms of the rent collection. So we don't wear people way above the threshold in terms of claiming any universal credit or housing benefits. We won't know what their income is. But we will know for 2/3 of our residents exactly what that is. And also we supplement that with visiting officers who go around. So if we haven't heard from someone for a while and we don't know what's behind the door and we don't know there's an issue, our visiting officers are out.
So are you writing to the people to say, are you interested in applying?
So we have,
and presumably this is a DWP pension credit.
So we have done various publicity within our Housing Matters newsletter in terms of this. Yes, we have. I mean, it's one of those things we have to repeat on a regular basis, but it is something that we need to do. But there's always more you can do. So
one of our kind of steers last year was to be really proactive about it, and so that we would reach out to people rather than waiting for them to come to us, because obviously that's not
but surely this is something DWP could help you with as well.
Possibly. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, our role as the landlord is to make sure that we help our residents claim that maximise the income that.
And reassurance.
But also, it's much better than their well-being and everything else, isn't it? So I do get that. But and that's why we put our energies into doing it.
I have another question, which is, I don't know what the 8.15. It's about leasehold and freehold reform. Is it possible that you could, for the uninitiated, explain the concept of marriage in this?
This might take a long time. Very complicated.
Yeah, because I mean, it says, but all bar two minor provisions. And one, what is that? And is it possible that you could put this into easy
Yes,
English?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this would be better served in something that Yana, who oversees our home ownership team, brings. I think what the reason it's here is the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act is we get income at the present moment in time through lease extensions. It will move to basically a one-off lease extension. We're not quite sure what the value of that will be at this moment, but it's likely to be similar to the lease extension values now. So actually, what it's really saying is that the income stream we'll get there is under threat. So that's
what impact will that have on you?
Well, it's about 2 million a year at the moment, so it's quite considerable. That's what we get.
So last year was mentioned in the report as something we were keeping a watch on because the act hadn't actually been passed yet. We weren't quite sure of final details, and now it has been passed. That's why we wanted to put it in here. So we're still working out the exact details of it. But it is one of our income streams that we will still get it, but we won't get it on a recurring basis.
And you won't get the marriage value issues. You won't get a value of extending it for 990 years.
I think I still need qualification on marriages, but.
Absolutely not.
Quickly, two things that have recently come up with a lot of residents is one that Councillor Rossi says about the winter fuel payment, and I think a lot of our residents will be reassured by the proposal that we could be able to help them there. I think that'd be great because there are a lot of people that are maybe not on benefits, elderly, and they're a bit worried about it. They're telling them no to go through the process. The second one is, can we help them? There's a lot of people that are leaseholders that have got to, for example, have got to replace their door, or they've got to have the door upgraded to fit. Can they get help on that as well? If they're not on benefits?
At the moment, that is not something that we're offering. It would be like any other. So if we were carrying out works, then of course we would you'd have the ability to pay over a certain period of time, and the rest of it. This is actually a lease duty that they're responsible for. So whilst we can offer the same price that we're getting, clearly it's not just a front door, is it? It's a fire door set that needs to be right, and the costs are quite high.
So sometimes it does vary even within the block. So someone's modified their door.
Yeah,
taking
lights or all sorts of stuff. So I can't give you an answer on that. Let me take away. I would have thought because of the contractual relationship that we have. But let me have a look at whether there is anything that can be done.
Thank you. Paragraph 7.7, you talk about potentially a new policy regarding disposal of non-estate properties that were more financial or operational sense to dispose of. I was intrigued because you say a case-by-case approach will be taken, and I wondered, what extent it is required as a new policy, or whether actually it's just a case-by-case approach already, and why the change of policy?
Well, this came in the last budget paper about us proposing to do it, and since then it has become policy. We were told by individual ward councillors and that they would still like to be told if things were happening and what was going on. So I believe Dan, the latest is that it is still it's an executive decision. Doesn't come to me necessarily, but we want to inform ward councillors when it's happening in their ward.
It's accurate to say, I think, Doug will correct me if I got this wrong, that the pre-existing asset management plan does anticipate occasional disposals. I think the reason why we thought it was worth bringing this in as a kind of separate policy is that, in the interest of transparency, we wanted to be clear that we were kind of actively pursuing, I feel like, with a kind of presumption in favour of disposal, a kind of a deliberate, active approach, which isn't really described in the asset management plan. And it seemed to just be using that provision in the asset management plan, but to kind of put our foot on the gas a bit without being explicit and transparent about that we were doing that and why, didn't feel quite right. So we wanted to do something that was kind of explicit.
Races, kind of, I think. Yeah, good question.
Do you have another question?
Following from that is, what is your criteria for disposal?
So it's not large family properties, but it's non-estate properties, and they are trying to be disposed of because the policy was agreed last year by the leadership team. But also coupled with that is the requirement that we then repurchase properties or on a council estate, more than likely, which will mean that the numbers do not.
So often the reason is because standalone properties are much more costly to maintain rather than if they're part of an estate.
So it's also worth emphasising that they're only disposed of if they're void.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
I mean, it's just, I think that sometimes these buildings are described as being tired, or they haven't been maintained, or, I mean, is it because of the cost of the maintenance?
So the cost of a street property to maintain will be significantly higher than the cost of, say, a tower block. So that's the reality of what we're doing, and we need to raise significant funds to pay for the capital works now.
So have you thought of, do you think of selling it on to a housing association so it retains some social housing?
Housing associations are selling most of their properties at the moment, but yeah.
So no, at the moment, but we have given a commitment that we will ensure that the level of social housing does not diminish in overall numbers.
Thank you. Before we move on with the committee, I see that Councillor, back has had her hand up for a little while. Did you want to?
Thank you very much.
Sorry for keeping you waiting.
No, that's fine. And I don't know what the brief for this paper was, so this is probably an unfair comment, but I'd have liked to have seen some things in here about how we're driving our own costs down and what measures we're taking, how we're, are we examining end-to-end processes? Are we seeking for procurement gains, contract management, efficiencies, ways of working? All of those things. Are we benchmarking our management costs against other boroughs? And I actually have no idea, I'm ashamed to say, of the percentage of costs that management costs constitute in this. And I'm sure that they're, a small bit of it, but, the contract spending, for example, on repairs is large. What are we doing to examine that? And I'm sure that's in a future iteration, but I just wanted to say now that that's a really important part of the budget scrutiny process.
Thank you very much for that. That's very helpful. And I see that Doug wanted to comment.
Yeah, we've got to couple that though with all our new responsibilities that come out in terms of what we need to do. So that's been quite part of the problem with revenue funding is whilst you can reduce what you're doing on certain things, we've now got demands around the consumer standards that come out of the Building Safety Act and so on.
So that, in a way, that emphasises the importance of setting that context in the final report. So that's really helpful. That's just.
I think over the last 5 years, there's been 9 different forms of regulations in just the housing industry alone, particularly social housing. But I agree that's.
I mean, we're talking things like office space and all the rest of it, and contract management. There are sure some things that we can get out of it. Thank you. I don't want to do this.
Councillor North.
Just very quickly, when disposing of an asset, just 2 things, because I'm particularly aware of what's happening in Lambeth at the moment with the estate that's been sold off. The tenants were offered the option to buy their freehold collectively through the enfranchisement, and they didn't get that, and they got a horror of a landlord that is ripping them off terribly. So I'm just thinking that if we were to do that, we wouldn't want these horror stories to be attributed to this borough. And would that include, I can think in my own ward, there is one that is a large block that there's 27 against 5 tenants, and that would be an ideal one for enfranchisement.
So we can't stop enfranchisement. It's up to the leaseholders to do that. This is only about disposing of flats that are already void and then reinvesting elsewhere. That's what this is about. So we would only dispose of the freehold under our policy if it's 100% sold. So if it is all leasehold, no disrespect, we are a social landlord. We don't really have a duty to come and do your major works every 7 years and then try and get money out of the housing management account, because that isn't what we're about. So we would dispose of that freehold, but other than that, we don't dispose.
But I wonder if Council North is also, sort of words in your mouth, but maybe we need to have a bit of a clearer kind of policy about enfranchisement. Are we letting people know that they can apply for it if there's over 50% in a block?
It's not the sort of thing we would encourage, because it disadvantages the tenant quite often. So the tenant then, we cease to be the freeholder of the property, and therefore our ability to do certain things in that property becomes restricted. In fact, one of the things we did say is that where a property becomes empty, at the present moment in time, we will try and divest ourselves of our because we don't have the same abilities because we're no longer the freehold. So the windows may well be falling out and all the rest of it, but I can't do anything about it other than moan at the freehold and try and take it. So that's why we then decided.
No, I understand that, but I just want the reputation of this council for selling off its housing stock to a ragman landlord. And then you've got some of our tenants in there, but most of them are now bought their leases. It's happening in Lambeth and other London councils because of their financial situation.
I do see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor North. And I think on the subject of ragman landlords or landlords about which we may have concern and would not wish to inflict upon our residents, I think we maybe need to also be slightly off topic from the paper, but I think we need to also be thinking about other developments that are happening around new homes in our borough and what those landlords have the reputation for as well. So sure if that can be noted. I myself have a couple of questions I'd like to run through and points to make. Now, I see in this paper one of the things that you are specifically requesting from the committee is our comments and feedback on the Tenant Support Fund. Now, in particular, it does mention, I think at 3.3, you talk about reviewing how the Tenant Support Fund is spent. And I don't think we have had information on how that Tenant Support Fund has been working. And perhaps that might be something that the committee would wish to request.
Yeah, as of August, we supported 409 households with grants totaling 200,000, and we are being proactive in it, but we can definitely get you more detail on that.
Excellent. That's great, because I think that was last year, the Tenant Support Fund was increased. So it's from 200,000.
We increased it last year because of the incredibly high interest
Absolutely.
rates.
So we need to make sure that it's reaching the people that it can help, given that it's there, and we also need to be thinking about if there is understanding and having that. And how do we get that support for the people that really need it? And I think that historically has been in the past perhaps an issue for councils. And I know that we have the Household Support Fund, I think now, again this year.
Yes.
So all these things about how do we actually get that support out and not sit on it. Or I think is really important that we need to be thinking about going forward. I had a quick question about the disposal of non-estate properties. Do we know how many there have been this year?
So we've got a list of so we're just finalising the process, because what part of the policy is also then finalised the process. So we've got 16.
Yeah, there's 16 at the moment.
16 of them at the moment.
16 in the process of.
Yeah.
Thank you. And of course, we need to weigh that against the loss of potentially high value or heritage style properties. Borough, which once they're gone, was gone, it was capital.
Could I just ask, what does 16 bought you?
We have, they're in the process, so with our various, the big values at the moment, actually.
What would you be expecting to get 16? Would you expect to get 24?
No,
No,
we're
'cause
replacing.
The purpose is,
But if you're replacing, you're not replacing like for like, presumably.
But part of this is about,
about raising capital, so we need to replace the units one for one, but buy cheaper than we're selling in order to then create capital which can be reinvested so we're not buying more than we're disposing of.
It's going back into a chunk of it may go to the capital.
No, it will. That's the reason we're doing it.
Absolutely, that's what.
Yeah,
that's the purpose.
to release the capital to invest in the capital programme.
So you're not actually purchasing any new flat, sorry, any existing.
So there's no net increase in the number of homes. That's right. The idea is that we sell the high value ones, we replace with ones with lower, and then it's that surplus which we're able to reinvest into the HRA budget to balance the capital
But
programme.
it's the replacing, it's the question I'm asking you. You're not replacing 16 with 16 cheaper ones.
That's exactly what we're doing.
You are
But
doing.
that leaves us a surplus which we can then reinvest into the.
There'll be a time lag between.
And I think it would be good as well that if in future reports, we could know roughly what sort of numbers are we talking about.
Yeah, how that process is going, yeah.
Because I mean, if we've got 16 potential properties in process at the moment, what sort of numbers in terms of surplus is that generating to put back in?
We estimated about 25 to 30 in a full year. It's what we estimated at the time.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So we're about right.
But I mean, in terms of towns rather than
Oh, yeah,
properties.
yeah.
I think that would be helpful to know because I also wanted to ask about, do you have a comment on that too?
It's really
It's,
like
if
you're selling the open high value property areas. It means that you don't have that spread across the borough of where
That's a
people
very
can.
valid point.
Yeah,
And actually, therefore, you have that you're going to tend to have concentrations in particular areas. And that is a concern. Is if we're in the business of housing people, and it could be Chelsea, which could be considered a high property value area, but you still need homes there.
It is worth emphasising that this was a decision that was taken as part of last year's budget, if you see what I mean. So
No,
And all of these considerations are taken into account.
I think
And
we
we had a
absolutely.
massive discussion at the leadership team
Yeah.
meeting, which is public meeting.
And also,
So all of this has been aired.
But as Doug said, we are talking about 32 properties.
I think it was before Linda was on the committee
Yes, I
that
think
we
it
had
may
this
be.
discussion.
I think it-
And if it was also leadership team.
We absolutely accept it. It's
Leadership
absolutely a
team.
trade-off. I mean, it's not something that we kind of do
Also,
gladly or quickly, but on balance, we took the view that it was the best way to maintain standards.
That's not 80% of people need temporary accommodation.
No, I understand that entirely. I understand that entirely, but it was.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's actually an important point that you have raised that we need to make sure is being considered also. Hence, did you have?
I did, just on the same topic, the new properties you buy, where are they? Are they in the borough or outside?
No, they're in the States, in the
They're
borough.
likely to be in-
Existing estates, so you're buying back
Existing
leases.
estates. Exactly, we're buying people who
It's
had
the right to buy back.
Thank you. I wanted to mention about carbon neutrality in 11.1. I think what we're seeing there is 1% of the world's carbon emissions. We have net zero on our social housing in borough. That's 1% of the whole borough's emissions. So 99% of borough's emissions will remain unchanged. And what we have here is the costs around carbon neutrality being passed to our social housing residents. And I don't know whether they chose that. And again, it's just a point to note because going forward, I do take on board fully the points about the climate and the environment that we are operating in. And on that point, I just want to note that the regulatory compliance, financial and the industry climate, the elephant in the room, which is Brexit, and the surprise that we got when we looked at the stock in 2019, that it wasn't 70 million back up, but 350 million. None of that is the fault of residents. And in a situation where we have a lot of moving parts, I think when we come towards the end of the paper, the options on the table, we had a rent increase and service increase last year, which has hurt residents quite a lot. And I think we need to be really looking at ways to avoid any. It's not sustainable to be increasing the rent to residents indefinitely. Every time we increase it, then the percent that we increase is percentage of a larger number than it was before. So it's hurting residents cumulatively, if you like, over the years. One of the things I wanted to suggest to the committee, given that we have significant pressures and a situation which I think is looking increasingly unsustainable without quite drastic measures, given that we are not the only council in this position by any means, HRAs across London are also having similar problems. That I think now would be perhaps a suitable time. It won't solve the immediate problem for this forthcoming year, but now would be a suitable time perhaps for the leadership to be making representations around the relevant government department.
So I'm pleased to say that's already happening. So there's been a report which has been spearheaded by the Southwark Council, originally on behalf of the 20 biggest stockholding councils in the country, but to which a number of other local authority landlords have now signed up, including Kensington and Chelsea, making exactly the point that you're making, but it's no longer reasonable or practical to expect HRAs effectively to be self-sustaining and to deliver everything that we're expecting of them. And therefore the government needs to intervene, as it were, with emergency measures in the short term, but also with kind of structural measures in the longer term to take the burden off HRAs and therefore by extension rent payers by kind of changing the deal effectively. So it might be the committee might want to have a look. So the report is available online on the Southwark website, and you'll see Kensington and Chelsea's name in the list of supporting authorities. And precisely with in mind the fact that there's a new government putting together its first spending review to make exactly that point. In the meantime, we're playing the hand we've been dealt, if you see what I mean. But we've joined that campaign.
Yeah, I think it's important that first of all, I'm really pleased to hear that, because I did not know about that, and I'm sure the committee will be pleased as well. But I think it's really important that we make that visible as possible, because if there's a letter somewhere on somebody else's council website that happens to have our name on the bottom, that's great. But I think we need to be making that really, really visible and looking at how we can lobby and campaign publicly and visibly around that at every possible opportunity.
Yeah, it was launched the day before the Grenfell Inquiry report, so you understand we were quiet about it in the immediate period, yeah. But there'll be certainly an opportunity in time for us to do that.
So yes, thank you. Sorry. It's going to be strong. So I think that was actually my most important point, and I think I was hoping that you were going to have a recommendation that you could do what you are clearly always doing. So perhaps we can get more information on that.
But let's make sure we send.
Yeah, well, I'll send the team.
And our name is on it.
I think that would be really helpful. Yeah, I wanted to. Oh, Doug needs to go and get his train. Oh, Agreement has reached me that we need to catch the train, and if you do, then
anyone who needs to catch a train.
I think myself needs to catch a train.
Anyone who needs to catch a train, please do feel free to go and catch a train. I'm sorry for keeping you so late. Yeah, I wanted to just finally look on page 16 at the options to be considered. And I think I've had some suggestions about possible options. And I wonder about looking at the tenant support funds. Can that be augmented from a general fund? So you've talked about some of you coming back in the future to the different ranges of support that's being offered. I think in terms of winter fuel payments, this is not just affecting our housing management residents, it's affecting people in social housing all across the borough.
So council policies is with his finance hat on is looking at that, and you mentioned.
And we have the household support funds. So I think I wouldn't necessarily want to dilute the tenant support fund, which is specifically around the rents.
Let's see
Yeah, so there needs to be working together around that. And I'll just check if there's anything else that I cannot do without saying. 12.3, do we have a time frame on?
So
When do you want this back, Chair?
usually we would carry out a consultation, we'd get some feedback from the tenants, the residents summit, we will know what the
GCC.
government's rent settlement will be going on with terms, so we'll be able to business plan effectively. So at the moment, we would usually bring this back, about the end of November, early December usually. And that, in fact, that's when we came last time, when we came too late. So we'd be able to come back and say, well, this is what we've now been told. We know a bit more. This is what hopefully this is what the
And put in what Mary has said and what the other committee members have said of their suggestions as well. Make sure that we're clear on that.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes. So it is going to come back to the December speaking meeting, but I wanted to ask about on 12.3, the updating on the financial position of the Housing Management Service to the TCC under the committee as well, and just make sure that gets copied in.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And they know that it's coming to the resident summit as well.
Excellent.
And we also make sure we send an invitation for the committee to the residents summit.
I think members are invited.
That's
right. Yeah, we know all councillors invited. I think you've also been all invited to the TCC as well. But got that to look forward to next week.
Thank you very much. So that being said, I don't have anything else on that paper. So I think we've had another very helpful discussion and some really good points. And we talked about excuse me. That would be at the end. So we are looking at paper agenda item A8.
We go
You may. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you for chairing a very interesting meeting.
Thank you very much. So we're looking at the work programme report. There's an update on the work programme and it's the activities. Setting out reports for upcoming meetings. Please note that the next meeting is currently scheduled to be on the 7th of November. However, this will be changed so as not to clash with public meetings taking place for residents as part of the community engagement and consultation process in response to the local public inquiry report.
Okay, so the 7th of November, but will change. Will we get it in November?
I'm hopeful that we will get it towards the end of November, but we will have to liaise with the officers to get a date for that.
Not easy, is it?
No, it's not easy at all. So we are recommended to discuss and agree the detailed work plan for 24-25 as presented in Appendix 1. Do we have any thoughts or comments on Appendix 1?
It's like an interesting, if you're reading the 7th of November meeting, November it's not one item.
Yes.
And your next meeting is 10th December. So it may be the same problem that you had in trying to move this meeting. That they become too close.
Yes, they do. They do. Thank you. I have one point, which is about rental spending, which is not appearing here, I don't think. And I think was agreed. Yes, can we double check it? So I think that's the overview. Did it go to overview? Thanks. That explains why. Lovely. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments, or are we happy to agree this?
Did you know when your Hostels.
Well, our last visit is next week. So then it's a question of writing up. And I can't say if it's, I don't know when the meeting's going to be, so I don't know if it'll be ready for the next meeting or not.
I imagine it probably will be, but
I think it probably will be. And what I'm just thinking now is maybe we need another meeting, we get something together and then have a meeting.
Yeah.
And do it that way. But the Andrew Proven is the last visit. So we're done with that. So,
that's the one that goes 17th, isn't it?
yes.
That's the one where the pensions report. We've got a meeting about parking in Earl's Court.
You'll have you.
Yes.
Well, you're going to have to choose, Linda.
It's parking. It's parking.
So do we have any other comments?
It's Earl's
or
Court, that's
questions?
the choice, isn't it?
Do we have any other comments or questions on the paper? No, we're happy to agree this then. In that case, thank you very much, and we are finally at the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone very much for
Thank you.
coming and
Thank you,
sharing
Zach.
your time. Thank you.
Right. That.
Yeah.
The thing was, they only have third party. Right, they don't have all of their roads. So